One Piece Podcast, episode 669 for the week of Sunday, May 2nd, 2021. My name is Ed.
And my name is Steve.
And joining us this week, first, we have our anime recap host, Sam Leach, is back with us today.
I'm first?
Well, it's a big anime week, Sam, so if any week you were going to be first, it's going to be this week.
I feel honored.
Well, and we're going to have Sam on to host recaps for 970 and 971 and 972, but we've also got a special guest coming up later. That is animator Henry Thurlow, who worked on this episode. So we'll talk to him towards the end of the episode. Let's see here. Also joining us this week, we have Jill Knight, our contributor.
Hello. Hi, yes. Sorry, Sam, first the worst, second the best. Thank you for introducing me here on the nicest of One Piece podcast episodes.
Well, guess who's not being called beloved friend later this episode?
Well, Ed, I can only wonder who's going to be the one in third with the hairy chest.
Well, joining us also is animation director for Rick and Morty and many other animated shows. We have Brian Newton joining us.
I do not have a hairy chest. It's actually quite a problem when you're almost 40.
Oh my god, you got to drink more bourbon, I guess.
The taste. Water never. Yeah, water.
Read that, John.
Stuff.
Read that John Schwartzwelder interview in the New Yorker. I'll put hair on your chest.
Okay.
God, yeah, got to check that one out too.
That was a good interview. But on One Piece related news, just a minor note, the Funimation Blu-ray DVD combo set of Season 11 Voyage 2, it'll be out in, a week from Monday, so that's May 11th. And, Steve, they were also doing some preliminary World Top 100 character poll news as well, if you want to illuminate.
Yeah, we're kind of doing, that's the Twitter account is the the official one at Ichiro staff. They're kind of just doing a countdown. I think what was it from 200 down and just going through all the characters from the WT 100 worldwide poll results. And there are some interesting ones. We really can't go through them all, but I want to claim, let's see here, 192 Pearl as a victory for myself.
That's probably because of you.
I mean, you've been raising awareness about Pearl issues for 10 years now. You too can feed a starving Pearl.
One vote a day.
The boy needs a fandom.
Is a good number.
The boy needs jaw surgery.
Apparently, Pearl was one of the trending hot characters one time, and no one bothered to tell me. So I feel, I feel kind of like ripped off there, but there's so many characters. Like I said, we're going from 200 down, and like just talking about all these rankings as a podcast in itself, that gives me an idea. But the latest, as of this recording, the latest batch we have are at 118 we have Khalifa, 117 we have Gadatsu, 116 we have King, and 115 we got Ichiji.
Is that the first brother of Sanji?
Yonji was previously.
He's lower than the rest of
rankings.
them.
Yeah,
Surprising.
Well,
Surprising.
he's the shitty kid brother.
Yonji's the worst. His favorite food is
Because
peas.
the green.
Like, I'm just throwing that out there. That should disqualify you from anything.
This reminds me of the dating profile episode of Parks and Recreation, where Leslie tries to go out on a date with the nerd profile, Tom's nerd profile, where his favorite movie is books.
or the Always Sunny, where his hobbies are ghouls.
And if you've ordered from Kino or Amazon Japan, the new Viva Card starter set is out as of a couple of days ago. You may not have gotten it yet, but they will be available soon. This is the one with the new binder and the Wano characters on the front. If you didn't already get those in that issue of Jump with the big hamburger on the front.
Yep.
It's gonna be weird because now I have not necessarily doubles, but we're gonna have variations of Luffy Taro and Zoro Juro.
I'm gonna have 3 of them actually, because I got the the perforated ones out of the issue of Jump, and then
Mhm.
they sold that Viva Card tabs set, which included
Yes.
the Luffy, Taro, and Zorojiro cards, and now I'm gonna get them again in this.
Yeah,
thing,
the
but
one
I
that
can't
came
help
out of the
myself.
Shonen Jump, at least the card stock is different, so that might be a justification. Just like, oh, put these in a special place.
Good thing our parents aren't like paying attention to what we
Right.
buy anymore.
Speak for yourself. I
you-
live with my parents. Or with my mom.
Does your mother observe your Vivre card purchases and be like, "You have 2 Luffy Taros already"? But
No,
mom,
I don't
not,
have any
not
Vivre
one
cards.
in this pose.
No, we can't talk about the $1,300 Shirahoshi figure I recently bought. So,
1,300.
oh, she's so beautiful, Sam. She's like 2 feet tall.
Wow.
Okay, I guess.
I don't have her
Maybe
yet.
I should move back in with my parents and be like, "Hey, I'm turning your office room into a toy room now."
It's like a whole stimulus check.
Yeah.
Saved you on rent.
Maybe that's what she spent her stimmy on.
All right. Besides that, was there any other news, Steve, that you wanted to talk about?
No. For the most part, I think it's been a pretty lax week. I don't think there's anything we're missing. But we got a beefy episode today.
Before we get into that, I want to first plug our Patreon, because we have, I think, monthly episodes of our current season of Fight Together coming out, as well as your monthly episodes, Steve, of Forced to Watch 4 Kids, and we're gonna get into the end of Logtown next month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
and not Laboon. Or do they include Apis but not Laboon?
no, they
We're gonna find
they
out.
did not
Apis
include
did as
Apis,
well.
which
Well,
could
can't
you
win 'em all.
imagine?
Probably the best thing
I
they've
can't wait
done.
to hypothetically talk about that. Yeah, it was smart. I can't wait to hypothetically talk about that with Alex, the possibility of them. Well, we did kind of, Ed, I know this is very inside baseball, but we did see a very 4Kids-esque dub of one of the Apis
Oh, yeah.
episodes in that test, one of those test dubs from Canada.
and you can hear clips of
On-
that on 6 or 7 year old episode of the podcast.
Yeah,
Only
Like
if you do
2015,
a
right?
barbecue.
Yeah. Yes.
yeah. It's
Yes.
the episode title is called
Barbecue
Barbecue
Time.
Time. Check it out.
That's right.
Was that recorded during a hurricane or
I
tornado?
think that was
warning?
recorded
It was-
during something like that. I mean, it was summertime in Dallas. These things happen. But yeah. So for our first thing that we're gonna do this week is we're gonna have a discussion about Kozuki Oden, and it would have been nice to do this in a couple of weeks, but since we were deprived of a manga chapter this week, and the anime of the flashback is finally coming to an end, we thought this would be a good week to discuss him. So why don't we get right into it?
Yeah, I don't think Odin's gonna live
Time
much
to pull
longer.
Odin's not. You better say goodbye to Odin. He's not long for this world.
He's done.
This is our this isn't really a manga recap or an anime recap. It's a Oden recap for the entire life and times of Kozuki Oden. So this starts at chapter 960, and I think it also starts in episode 960 of the anime, or 959. I forget, because they do a little preview thing.
You get close.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched all 14 episodes of this, and I read it this morning. Watched it yesterday, and yeah. What do you? I guess we can sort of start out with the stories about. Go ahead, Steve.
I was saying, we could briefly just touch upon all the times Odin was foreshadowed or just hinted at, because we first learned of Odin way back in the Zoarc, when the whole twist was that Momonosuke is actually the heir to the throne, and that Kinemon's not actually his biological father. It's the former shogun Orochi. Not Orochi. Oh god, Odin. God.
Uh-oh, I missed something in the manga.
No. Yeah, so Odin is this sort of legendary mythical figure, but there's also sort of the aspect of everything about him being legendary and things not necessarily being as they seem or as things are told. Because we start off with the story about the mountain god, and yeah, I do kind of regret that in the anime I don't remember seeing the stitched up boar. Does any, I don't.
They
I
didn't.
know we got a panel of
they
that
didn't have it.
in the manga, but
They,
that's,
No.
that's a
Oh.
shame.
no, they did.
They did. I must
Stitched
have
Up 4?
In the
Yeah,
in
I
the
was,
anime,
I
I didn't
must have
catch
been-
it. I was looking for it too.
Yeah.
Ah.
It's very brief, but
Mm.
it
I'm
would've
pretty
been
sure
in
it's
there.
there. You know what? I can't even. It's not like I'm not like Jill. I don't have like a folder of screen caps, so I can't verify this.
No, Crunchyroll doesn't let me screen cap anymore. I'm really depressed.
It's a shame.
I've got nothing.
It still works on your browser if you screenshot.
Oh yeah, but then I gotta watch my browser.
So we start off with him at like age 18, and he's this sort of swaggering.
Very beefy 18.
Very
And you
easy,
see him-
14 to 18.
Yeah. And you see him in like the flashbacks as like, you know, he's going down to the pleasure halls, and he's like, even as an 8-year-old, he's much larger than Momonosuke is now.
I love the kind of the rug pull of, you know, we are talking about this guy throughout multiple arcs, and we have like kind of a vague idea of what kind of person he is, but then like once we get into his actual flashback, it suddenly hits us that he's this total goblin man.
I think part of that is because we've been associated to how noble rulers are often presented in One Piece, and even though like this is Japan land, you expect like, oh, it's going to be the most regal, like honorable samurai. No, he's a complete like ruffian.
I mean, we knew
Yeah.
that he didn't want to be shogun, and we knew that he, he thought Wano
Yeah,
was.
we
too
only got that a
cramped,
little
right?
later though.
Yeah, Odin feels like he was born in the wrong country. It's like, I love that he's so like, oh, I'm so confined to the island. I want to go visit everything. And yet he's like this folktale of Wano.
I always
basically.
picked up on
Yeah.
the fact that like he feels like he's a mini Luffy, specifically when he's like
I mean, he's a lot
yeah.
larger than Luffy.
that, not
Mini.
physically, but like, the fact that he was.
He's a synecdoche of Luffy.
Yeah, Luffy's like his leg.
Kozuki Oden is so large, he has a heliport on
Yeah.
top of his head.
Hey, he's
That's
a
how
Dick
big he
Tracy
is.
villain.
It's where the Tontatas
He's-
land.
He's the size of a
Right.
hospital.
But the fact that like since he was confined to that island, he was like, well, I'm just gonna walk around the island, and like while he was doing that, like built his crew essentially.
I love.
I
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to add that, like, I must admit, when Kozuki Oden was first like name dropped back in Zou, I don't want to use the term bookwormy, but I was imagining a character a lot more like how Denjiro looked.
Yes.
I was expecting a lot more. Or hell, even Koshiro, Zoro's master. I was expecting a character a lot more
Yeah,
like
I
that.
agree.
Yeah, well, think
So-
about the samurai that we had seen up to then. It was Koshiro and Momo, and then we saw Konjuro, who was just out there, but like we could just ignore that because it's Konjuro.
Oh, you mean Kinemon?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Kinemon. I kind of Odin's design when he first showed up. I was like, all right, this is real weird right now. But I actually love how big he is, if only because it really brings in that idea that he's cramped on this island, and they're pretty much all, besides some of them, normal sized, and like even the buildings aren't big enough for him. There are tons of points in the manga and the anime where you can see that he like doesn't really fit into
That's a
the
good
country,
point.
and I thought that was such a good touch.
Steve can relate.
I was about to say Kozuki Oden encapsulates the feeling of being 6'4" in Japan. That's
Another
And he even had the hair on top too. You didn't have to deal with that.
yeah. Another thing, like you notice, I'm glad you brought up his design, Jill, is the fact that he has extremely muscular legs, which Oda often goes out of his way not to draw, even with muscular characters. So
It's actually reminiscent of the way that sumo wrestlers are depicted in traditional Japanese art. The way their muscles are depicted. It seems it's interesting to me. Like all these sumo wrestlers are depicted with these like tree trunk, sinewy legs, despite like having
Yeah.
these guts.
yeah,
as
totally.
well.
Oda
It's,
loves
uh,
drawing Odin's legs. Like he's always got them
Yeah.
out there.
No one-
And the anime loves drawing his crotch.
You're right.
yeah, no one complains about like everyone complained about Frankie's legs and crotch, but no one complains about Odin's.
Wano Kuni is just a more advanced society than,
More-
Right.
than Wano.
Less shame, except when you're a woman, then you gotta cover up.
Oh, of course.
I wish they had that talk between Odin and Frankie, just like on his panties.
Well, that's where
Yeah.
Frankie got it from.
Freaking Ed is like Frankie trying to tell Odin's like it's an upper body sport. Odin.
You got to get on the gas, Frankie.
I throughout this segment, my spiel here is going to be just pulling a lot of comparisons between the manga and the anime adaptation, and the anime, like, it starts like at halfway through the episode, it begins a flashback, and in the manga it kind of bookended chapter 959. But one of the most like iconic images I have of Odin is from his first appearance in the anime, of just the shot of his gams just walking through town, and it's got this. It really truly has the Saturday Night Fever opening scene feel to it.
Staying Alive by the Bee Gees.
Yeah, tell by the way, use my walk. And it's just I hear that when I'm just watching the
That's
sequence
amazing.
of Odin walking through the
Yeah.
flower capital, and that's very him. That's him walking through the town like he's the shit.
Wano Night Fever.
I wish Brooke
Yeah.
had
The
met
white
Odin
suit.
so they could, jam out and dance and stuff. That theoretically could have happened, but alas.
Brooke was already dead by that point, right?
At some point.
Oh, 20 something
Yeah.
years? Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, because we still obviously the flashback starts 41 years ago when he's 18.
Brooke had
And,
just died.
He dies.
Brooke would have been close to 10 years dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he was in there for 50
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, Odin dies when he's like in his mid to late 30s, like 36,
Yeah,
37
Odin
years
doesn't
old,
leave
something like
doesn't
that.
leave the island until after Brooke's dead.
Right.
Odin is built like a Joestar. He doesn't look like a teenager.
You're absolutely correct.
But when they're talking about the sycophant who is reading the recitation of Odin's life to Sukiyaki is. It's not clear how much of this we're supposed to necessarily believe, because we get a look at the mountain god incident, and it's like he was taking the blame, I guess, because he feels like the people of Wano already see him as this character, like, and he wants to leave. He doesn't necessarily care at this
Yeah, he
point
doesn't-
how they feel about him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although, some of it I do.
I
Never mind,
I
I
believe,
I believe,
all of them.
here's the thing, I believe he did all of it, but I don't know if it's all,
The
like,
complete story.
exactly how described to
Yeah.
happen.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
who-
like it-
the
like-
harem war is like the harem war, but who knows? Maybe he's taken away from like abusive
Exactly.
husbands or something. Like,
Yeah, well, yeah, I was like what I read between the lines with like the kidnapping women is that, you know, he's the guy who can get away with that. Like when he does it, it's like fun and adventurous. But if any of the other men in Wano tried to do
Yeah,
it, like,
I mean,
then-
look no
Yeah.
look no
What's-
further
what-
than how like even the world government will spin stories in their favor. How like the Straw Hats exploit is like, oh, they came and raided in this lobby and burnt everything down. It's like, you ordered that buster call.
and even the
You got to remember, that's like every pirate's reputation in this series. Like, even remember how like
Mhm.
Zoro was built up to just be a monster, but he's just a charming buff man who gets lost and likes eating
and
onigiri
still
off
a
the ground.
monster.
Yeah.
I think the anime might have like lightened this up a little bit, because
yeah, they cut the,
yes.
They cut the word abduct.
kidnapping line out.
Yeah, they didn't use the
Yeah.
word abduct. I mean,
I-
even in the manga, it says they were free to leave at any time, but like the anime makes it, it softens it.
I think the way the anime adapted it, and this is like, oh, like maybe this is really a read between the lines thing, because maybe abducting women was the goss that was getting passed around, but it seemed just knowing in hindsight now, I bet Odin was just walking around. I not bet. I should just say I have a feeling like Odin was just walking around town, and all the women are falling for him. And he's like, "Oh, come back to my place." And when all the women are gone, everyone's just like, all of the women in town have been abducted by Odin.
yeah.
And it's just,
Well, it's also he gives that speech after he eats Odin off of that man's bones. Grandpa, what's his face?
Yeah, and the women.
And there's like, oh, this is one of the famous Odin speeches, and all the ladies swoon over him.
Yeah, and it's like we'd never see that like again. Like if Odin had gone out to the world and just started like being a Sanji and hidden on every woman, I'd be like, all right, maybe the harem war was like a real thing. But like literally, the only woman he pretty much talks to is Soki. Yeah. Even that's minimal. But
or it's just a part of his. Or, I mean, not just, but it's a part of his. You know, he was a much more wild person as he was young.
I think it's more a matter.
As
I think it's more a matter of just building his charisma, but it's not that he himself is trying to be charismatic. It's just people, men and women, fall for him and want to follow him.
Yeah, because he didn't even want them to follow him.
Right? He's never like macking on anybody. He's like, hey, baby, what's going on?
Women love him. Men want to be him.
It's because he's not trying to be charismatic that he is charismatic.
Yes. And that he's awesome.
It's a very One Piece thing.
We brought up the that funeral scene, the cremation scene, where he's eating the pot of Odin off of the just extinguished.
What a scene, man! That was
corpse
so
of,
good.
What was his friend's name?
Katsuzo. Yeah.
Because everyone's just like, oh my god, Odin's a monster, and I think it's supposed to be like, oh god, Odin's terrible, and then you get to the page and it turns out, oh, he was like an old like drinking buddy of Odin,
of this 18-year-old.
And this is Odin's way of paying. This is Odin's way of paying respect.
Also, a little bit of foreshadowing.
It's just he is totally just like he's the bad boy in town, and like everyone. I think a lot of it, looking back now, it's just like, oh, it's just like a lot of just rumor and speculation. But he's definitely he picked a fight with the Yakuza at the gambling hall.
Yeah.
But who knows how that would have started?
It's like people are really threatened by people who don't have shame because it reminds them that they shouldn't have shame either, and then like the guy take him down a peg.
Looking back on the flashback at the beginning, Odin does he doesn't look like, I mean, okay, it's Odin's whatever, but he does feel really young. Like doesn't really want to deal with real life consequences. He kind of knows like, oh my god, he might have to become shogun, but he doesn't want to think about it. He just wants to live life his own way and not really answer to anyone. And he does feels like really young to me.
I mean, it's not really until after he gets to Raftel, I think, that he has this sense of what his duty actually is. Like, this is why he wanted to leave Wano in the first place, and we'll get to this later, and it's the reason why he can't stay the first time he comes back, and why Toki gets angry with him for wanting to stay. That this is your adventure. You have to, I fell in love with the man who believed in this adventure. If you quit now, you're not the man I fell in love with. That was basically what she said. And it just feels like he
you don't have to tell it like it is, Toki.
Yeah.
The Raftel point is interesting because that it's when he returns to Wano, having they found what was on
later renamed Laugh-Tail.
Laugh-Tail. Like it's like they found it. They found like whatever the secret meaning of life is, and now he's coming back, and he seems like he's much more kind of responsibility focused after that, or at least he feels like he's willing to spend the last moments of his life like protecting people.
I feel like that's gonna be
his
me.
dream.
Once, like, One Piece ends and I know it, then I'm like, all right, guess I'll be an adult now.
Yeah. It's
his dream coincidentally kind of just coincides with the One Piece and Laugh-Tail because it was the Kozuki clan that closed off
Wano.
Yeah, closed Wano off to the rest of the world. Which we later find out was just out of fear of what was coming from the world government. And so Kozuki Oden just grows up being so sick of his one horse town.
Comes back to that.
I think
that is the country of Wano.
Oden is so
sorry. You go, Joe.
Yeah. Sorry, he's so constricted in Wano that it's like he doesn't have room to grow. Like he doesn't grow as a character. He doesn't grow past like his like childishness and selfishness until he gets to see the rest of the world.
I think that, but I think that's also largely in part of the notion of these seminal characters who exist in the One Piece world are all trying to fulfill their own personal selfish goals and aspirations in one way or another. And like, there's clearly like an idea or will being carried forward through the series, and like Oden just felt like he had to fulfill that, and he did. And the only last thing he had to do left was open Wano's borders, which he didn't get to do. But going forward,
He
You know, it's
he set it in motion.
You know what's interesting in this flashback? The prologues for opening 1 and opening 2 are both recited as dialogue in this flashback. Inherited will, the dreams of the age, and wealth, fame, power, both said in dialogue in the flashback. Just like I don't. Sometimes it's cheesy when you say the line, but it's not cheesier than Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is like say the line, the movie.
But not even the new one. Not even.
Did they say "get over here"?
Yeah, they did it.
But everything else sucked.
Could have done more. Well, yeah. Anyway,
hey! This is Kozuki Oden, not Modin Combat, or you're trying to make this out to be. We could get definitely into the grander scope of things, but I think I just wanted to make sure I want to talk about because he's a character that's introduced. One of the first characters introduced in this flashback is young Kinemon, and I think after reading this entire flashback, like Kinemon's stock went up so much.
Yeah.
For me, he's a character like he was a fine character. He's not a very popular character, and he's like, yeah, well, he's just like a loyal servant of Oden, and he's basically our like Wano representative.
Yeah, think about how long he's been around. Too.
Now it's
over 300 chapters, maybe 400.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we know like kind of the weight he's carrying, it really says a lot about his character that he's had to endure so much. And especially so many hurdles after being sent forward in time with Dressrosa and Punk Hazard and Dressrosa again. All my respects for Kinemon. And also young Otsuru is like adorable.
Yes. I love Kinemon and Tsuru's relationship in the flashback, especially where Kinemon's kind of a no good punk, he's kind of a troublemaker, but it's like because he just has so little like respect for himself, or like he assumes that he has no value, so like it doesn't really matter if he does wrong or gets himself killed or something. And it's only when like Tsuru is getting in trouble that like suddenly like he can see himself reflected back from her.
Yeah, it's very Yusuke Keiko.
Oh yeah, I really love the dialogue exchange with Kinemon saying, it's like, who's going to miss like a guy like me if I was dead? And
yeah, like
and,
that, like
Otsuru,
that's how he
him.
like gives himself permission to like be a scoundrel.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
But like it's not like he's incapable of guilt. Like once his actions have the consequence of like hurting Tsuru.
Yeah, and like when he meets Oden for the first time, and Oden literally descends from above. It's I don't know. I love like the awe that people feel when they see Oden like kick ass.
Kinemon and Denjiro.
Yeah. It's such a great scene. And then I love that immediately they're both like, I gotta follow this guy for the rest of my life. It's almost
like there is
the opposite of Luffy in that Luffy goes out of his way to get comrades, and half of them just say no to start with, and then he persists. Well, meanwhile, Oden's like just living his life, and people like insist on following him.
But also, Luffy doesn't look like Oden. Like, it's like Luffy is just like a boy in like a dingy straw hat and jorts.
Yeah,
and
Oden was probably his
no one's
when
like
he was 5.
that's the man I'm gonna follow. So,
any of the other Akazaya 9 you guys want to talk about before we sort of get into Oden leaving the country?
Just before we get into, because I know like what follows that is the introduction to a lot of the rest of them, but just the mountain god sequence, specifically in the anime, like is phenomenal. And it's definitely like I don't want to say like, oh man, like the manga is not as good as it used to be. There's so many time constraints with both manga and anime production, but there's only so much you could fit per page, especially within the limit of 18 pages. So that's the beauty of the anime. That's where the anime needs to come in and step
The anime
in
is at
and
its
fill the
worst.
gaps.
The anime is at its worst when there's space. There's just space here. What's all this space doing in my anime? Like let's fill it with stuff.
Or honestly, when the anime just plays it too safe.
Yeah.
It's like episode 957 would not be like a 10th as good as it was if it was just them playing it safe and doing a faithful adaptation.
Do you want to remind the listeners
That's
what
big
happened?
news.
that's like the news heard around the world
Right.
episode, and that's when we kind of get the
Warlords
recap.
abolishment.
Yeah,
Mm, okay.
we get the recaps of like all like who the warlords are and everything. It's a fun world building chapter in the manga, but like visually, it's not that impressive. I think it's arguably one of the greatest anime episodes of the entire series run.
Oh man, that's high praise.
And I gotta throw in, just we're talking about Oden, and Wano in general. Oda's designs of Wano has been amazing. All the characters look phenomenal. They're all super different. And then just the colors out there are great. So I love that like Oden has like this dark black hair out of everyone else in Wano. I think it's like a fun, interesting design choice.
Mm-hmm. With a tinge of green.
Tinge of green.
Also the animals I think are very good, very good. Like that baby boar is so very cute. And the deer, like there's deer at the beginning of this flashback that I always caught my eye.
There's the
and
toad.
The toad and Cat Viper and Dogstorm and Kawamatsu as children.
It looks very storybook.
I love how round the buildings are. Like there's so much detail in the architecture, and you would think it would stick, very strictly to perspective, but it just they just look so bouncy.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like you almost like they should be kind of like homies almost, and like bouncing a little bit as you like walk through. It's I love it.
It's beautiful. But yeah, then like when Odin is disowned by his father and he's just like, I'm leaving. See ya.
Disown this, and he grabs his balls.
Where he pretty much accrues just a crew of fanboys, and that's our introduction to a good majority of the Akazaya 9. Because that's of course like Denjiro we meet in the Flower Capital, of course he's Kinemon's friend. But once they set on their journey, then we meet Izo, Kikunojo, later known as Okiku, Kanjuro, who I guess who's just always been a creep, Raizo, and then like Ashura Doji was like just he was like top boss in Kuri, which was just like
Ashura's he's the one who doesn't start out as like a fanboy of Oden. Like he's a tough guy like Oden, and that's kind of where they meet eye to eye.
And Oden earns his respect. I was very like mild on Ashura Doji, but after that flashback, I was like, all right, it's some good stuff.
I think the anime, of course, once again steps in here because we see Odin's raid play out on Kuri a lot more in the anime, and we do have that dialogue exchange. Like Ashura brings this up again, but Ashura loathes Odin because he thinks Odin, since being in a royal family, he was he was all pampered and didn't live the harsh life that some of the other citizens like Ashura had to, so he wouldn't understand. And the anime definitely helps Ashura's character because he's a guy who came, just had a rough life, and I don't know, just trying to make things better and trying to make sure that there aren't any like lawless lands like Kuri ever again.
That back and forth
Wano.
between Ashura Doji and Odin was pretty good. At least the kind of set up the themes that were visually there, but may not have just been like there in the dialogue. But I'll go this route. I actually like the fact that we didn't get to see the conflict that Odin had the win Kuri from Ashura Doji, because then it lets your imagination kind of like explain that battle, because the details aren't as important. It's just as emotionally relevant for when you see Odin like on top of a pile of bodies.
With arrows sticking out of him.
So it's like you get this battle was rough and he conquered.
I don't want to see how he got those arrows. Yeah, this is a case when less is more. Yeah.
I love how many scenes there are of Odin where it's just like in like any other arc almost. If he was the protag, these would be like end of chapter scenes, like big double weight spreads. But some of them it's just like, yep, Odin did this and Odin did that, and then he kicked that guy's ass, and we're moving on to this part. It's like a condensed, his whole journey just super condensed, and I kind of love it. It's just like a highlight reel.
Yeah. And then we get the bits about the sort of the Wano plot of like Yasu, or not Yasu, Orochi like basically stealing a bunch of money, and that sort of gets explained later on in the flashback as well. But yeah, he's just out there borrowing money from everybody and lying to everybody. Like, yeah, it's interesting like how they all put it together after Odin comes back and to figure out what happened.
One of the things I like about this flashback is how not everything is just stated outright. Like, Orochi is introduced, but we don't see him stealing money yet. Or, it's like everything is like we come back to it. It's a lot of great setup.
That was actually an interesting distinction between the anime and the manga, where in the manga I remembered that Yasu said he thought to himself in the manga, Orochi would just Odin would just steal the money, but in the anime he says it out loud to Orochi, which I think makes Orochi more.
Well, he says it to like his attendant, doesn't he?
Is that because it was in like a thought bubble in the manga?
I think he said it because he was, the attendant's like, oh, I think it was Odin because Odin's the kind of guy who would steal stuff, and then Yasu's like, hey, Odin's a piece of shit, but
no,
he's an honest piece of shit.
It was after Orochi said, I saw him take it, and Yasu was like, well, he would just walk out the door with it.
It does bring up, I love Odin's relationships with some of the characters in Wano that are not necessarily just the Akazaya, but like his relationship with Yasu, who's like kind of just being like wants Odin to be the best that he can be, but he knows he has to let him get his like youthful selfishness out first.
Giving all that money to the Akazaya.
Yeah, and then with like Hyogoro and Hyogoro's wife later, like they're also, and like even then that's like Odin's older, but they still treat him kind of as like a kid or someone that needs to be like helped out. So like the love that he gets from like some of the people in Wano is fantastic.
Yeah.
One thing that was really shocking to me in this flashback was seeing the face fruit and the barrier fruit. And here I'm like, oh, they're just really putting. I think it was a good choice by Oda to put that back in time, because there's no way that like the current characters would have had them back then. They weren't even alive.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like these are powerful fruits and they're sought out. They're sought after. And
it's also interesting. Those are fruits now we associate with allies, not antagonists.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I am so in. It's Oda just put in this tiny little bit where it's like, oh, they have the same powers that the characters have it, and now I'm so incredibly invested to how the fruits got passed to our current carriers. I don't know if it's important, but it's so interesting to me.
Maybe I'm extrapolating too much, but it feels to me like Higurashi was associated with the Rocks Pirates. Or at least they're trying to put that in there, especially by having her switch faces to Shiki in the anime.
I had.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then also knowing Kaido. Maybe knowing Kaido.
In the manga too. The Shiki face is in the manga as well.
Yeah.
It was? Okay.
I think it was a little harder to make out. But the anime basically confirmed it.
I remember he was I think he was in the manga where you saw like the back of his hair.
Yeah, I'm looking at that page now, but yeah, when Higurashi is demonstrating her powers to
he's also
Orochi.
reshown again during the anime during Rogers.
Well, I remember thinking that was Shiki even when the manga chapter was new.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah,
the hair was.
Yeah, I just had forgotten. I'm trying to recollect a lot of thoughts I had while reading this, because definitely a lot of them have changed. But yeah,
if we get enough like flashbacks that are far enough in the past, like I think we'll see this technique used again, where like Oda's bringing familiar fruits back because he can. Because of how the things.
Well, it's a good storytelling device because the reader is already familiar with these abilities, so like we know what could possibly happen or how things are going to go bad. Like when we're introduced to Higurashi and she has the clone ability, we know, oh shit, they're going to impersonate. They're going to impersonate somebody.
Like
either
he can reuse ideas, and we get like the fun surprise of like, oh, I know that thing.
Mm-hmm. But not having to waste time on exposition. Explaining how it's like, oh, we know how.
extremely efficient.
Well, it's
Well,
like
let's
jumping a
talk
little far
about-
too ahead, but just for example,
Yeah.
like Odin's defeat at the hands of Kaido,
Spoilers.
like that's all visuals. Because we are already familiar with this ability, but then again, by that point, in context of the flashback is already introduced. But Ed,
I was gonna say, should we start talking about Whitebeard and Roger?
Yes.
we should. I'm trying my best also to keep track of like the timeline in this flashback because sometimes it's specific, but other times it's not. But at this point, I think this is when, and this is after Cat Viper, Dogstorm, and Kawamatsu join up. This is 33 years from the present timeline.
Which would make Odin in his mid-20s when he leaves, and so he's gone for about 10 years. Oh wait, no, he's gone for like 5 years.
Yeah, because
and then he's back for 5 years doing his silly dance, and he dies at the age of like 36 or 37.
yeah.
Okay,
But
but
yeah,
like
we're
Whitebeard,
pirates.
Whitebeard and Roger. It's so interesting to see these guys in their, the form that they were when they made the legends. These are like, we've seen Whitebeard, we've only seen flashbacks of Roger, but we see their full power in this flashback, just like all the black lightning bolts that fly off of these battles are like, I never got tired of seeing like the adventures of the Roger and the Whitebeard pirates. It's just, these are the things that the legends were made of when we came into this story.
They're pretty much the prologue to our current story. It's so interesting to be able to, because Odin is relatively new to us. It's so interesting to see them introduced to someone who is new to the world of piracy, really. So it's like a little prologue, and
He has to learn about, you can't sink the ship without stealing money from it.
At the time, I almost felt like Whitebeard and Roger were hijacking this flashback because I was starting to care more about. I'm like, yeah, Odin's cool and all, but man, we're finally finding out more about Whitebeard and Roger in their prime,
Especially,
and also they are ridiculously powerful.
yeah, especially Roger. Like once Odin is on Roger's ship, it is a Roger story, and Odin's just like a side character in it.
Yeah,
it's a sub flashback of like
I can't help. I can't help, and this has such a negative connotation to it. But sometimes I think it's like once Whitebeard and Roger introduce, Odin feels very like self-inserty.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm there too, fighting alongside Roger, and
Almost
I'm like
like in a
just as
fanfic.
powerful.
Yeah, like someone
Well,
put
yeah.
in their OC or something.
No, this is his journal. It is kind. I mean, it theoretically really happened, but this is his
I have
perspective.
a theory about that, and it actually has to do with potentially Yamato's role if they were kind of joining on the crew. Is the fact that like Yamato, at least in the actual kind of one of the mythical caricatures of the Yamato, is that they're a scribe or songwriter. Yeah, and I'm half thinking now. This is a wild theory. I've only been thinking about this a couple of weeks. That like if Odin was literally the person writing down the journey of both Whitebeard and Roger, then Yamato's the one writing down the process. He's the one writing down the process of the Straw Hats.
Yeah, Yamato's the apostles writing
Exactly.
the Bible.
My
The only
Bible.
problem is Yamato got a real late
well,
start.
I imagine like especially since all the stuff we were talking about with Odin and his legends, it's like, well, he wrote down all the legends that he heard secondhand from like, oh yeah, we went to this lobby and we like kicked their ass and blah blah blah. I was like, oh man, you guys are incredible. Let me just write that down right now.
Now that we're talking about Whitebeard and Roger, now's a good time as any to bring up the himbofication of Goldie Roger.
My God, Oda went
in this
for
flashback.
it, and I love it.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. Roger's freaking hot.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
his older appearances seem so like incomplete now.
Right?
like he seems like it's like you have the virgin Goldie Roger in his like raggedy ass clothes and hair with his nose hair mustache. King of the Pirates. And then we got this freaking beef of a man.
I understand how he got rouge now.
Yeah, Well, I just thought like, oh, they must be like on a summer island or something. Like, you know, his shirt's unbuttoned. They're probably hot and sweaty. But no, that's just how Roger is now. But also, I should note, this is when I finally picked up on it. Roger looks like an older Ace.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's
yeah.
And I think it's also because because Ace's design has changed a lot through his run. But I could recognize right away just that first 2-page spread of the Roger Pirates, and I'm like, oh, that's Ace's hair.
Yeah, like kind of crinkly, wavy.
Mm-hmm. Like the short long hair. It's not quite shoulder length, but it's.
I like
it's
the
long
idea
enough.
that Oda has been kind of probably thinking about how to design Roger throughout the entire series. Like, he's very different from when he was first introduced. So now when he finally gets to put him in, he could be like, all right, now I know the backstory, who he's related to, this is what he's going to look like.
And he also knows that sex
right.
sells.
And sex
But also, to be fair, Oda rarely drew Roger. If you think about the entire length of the series, Roger basically before the Marineford War showed up like 3 times, really.
Yeah. Like I think about his like chapter 0 appearance where he's got like very circular eyes and like he just looks like kind of like a weird blobby rectangle.
And I think I said
it's like all retcon.
And I think I said this when we were like going through the Roger flashbacks in the manga, is that this is the first time Roger felt like a character. Before then, he was always the legendary king of the pirates. We'd only get like a line from him, not just his execution line, but also Rayleigh's memory of him when he says, "I'll never die, partner." Stuff like that. Just little hints, but never like a full understanding of his character. Like, how does he react in battle?
Or even
how
like
does he react in
the
comedy situations, etc., etc.
when he approaches Rayleigh on the boat and his face is all in shadow.
Yeah,
and he's
that's
wearing
all
a straw
kind of like
hat.
myth and legend building, but it's not character.
Should we talk about?
We kind of jumped ahead.
I was gonna say, should we talk about
jumped
Toki?
ahead.
Absolutely, let's talk about
Yeah.
Toki.
I would say like we forgot about Toki, but that's totally understandable because I think one of my biggest gripes with this flashback was kind of how like
She's not there.
like just how little she had to do in this flashback.
Yeah,
I think I think a year later in hindsight, her role like in this story
Oda's
is a lot
saving her.
more.
He's saving her for something.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could
you
we could get into
Shut
that.
up, Sam.
No, she ain't. But
But we'll get a flashback.
I
I mean,
think-
if Odin's not alive, someone's got to be alive.
But
There's
like
gotta be
her
some.
connection to the
who
past,
says?
the
Who
connection
says?
to her past and her double fruit makes her like one of the most critical characters in the series. She literally is from the past.
From Wano, but
You
not
don't-
born there. 800 years old, but actually
which is
26.
like everything about
You
this
don't
story.
get the hint of that in this flashback
because they
Like,
just brush
she-
right over it.
But I think it's because I think we're not ready for that yet. We're not at that point of the story.
Yeah,
where
Oda's
we're
still
gonna find out.
maintaining a few more mysteries. Like, we've gotten a bit of Roger's flashback and how he became king of the pirates, but we don't have the Rock story yet. We don't have the Ancient Kingdom story yet, and Toki's a big, kind of connection thread to all that right now.
Yeah.
I know people familiar with our show probably know this ongoing debate about Toki being
She's
alive.
dead.
My personal thank you, Jill. My personal feelings is no, this isn't the last we've seen of Toki, but that's because her story is in the past, not existing in the present. I think we're gonna get some flashback about this ancient kingdom,
And
and
Toki
we're gonna
will be
find
there.
out why Toki left.
You can't combine a woman
Or
who
why her
lived
parents were
during the
there in the
Void
first
Century and a clan that is the ones who make the poneglyphs and not have some kind of record left
Right.
over.
Because, like, think about it. She'll be the only potential character we know who will be existing back then. We have no other connection to any other living character yet.
She really is our window into that world. Should Oda ever choose to
Right.
show it,
I'm sure we will.
and he will. I mean, I don't think he could avoid it.
I have to say my biggest issue with Oden, and I do love him. I think he's a really fun character and a good foil to Luffy in a bunch of different ways. But his relationship with Toki is so like there are parts that are fine. I like their introduction, but then after that, Toki is just there to be Oden's wife. Like oh, she's from 800 years
Baby
ago.
factory.
She's had 2 kids. She barely says anything in this flashback when they're on the ships, like at
You
all.
forget she's there.
Absolutely.
After they switch to Roger's ship, you really forget they're like, well, even I would say that about Momonosuke and like especially Hiyori. You forget they're there.
There's like whole picture of like, oh, look at them on the island, or look at them like having fun, and Toki's nowhere to be seen.
I think
Hiyori.
Was Toki on Laugh Tale?
No,
or
she
something?
didn't go.
No, she was already in Wano.
She got the.
No, but yeah, that was
She was
the.
on- that's
Also,
right, that's
her
right.
okay.
Yeah.
Can we talk about her sickness because she was so relieved to be close to Wano or whatever Oda made up? I think the mysterious sickness thing is so played out and boring at this point. We had it with Yorkie, we have it with Roger, and I can like be okay with those, like whatever they do what they need to do. But that's the dumbest way. You could have gotten Toki off of there. You could have been like, oh, we want to raise these kids in Wano. Like you could have done anything
It's
else.
very drama, like soap opera drama. It's like, and we have a mysterious illness we can't cure.
Buggy comes down with the same illness.
He
You're
got
right.
what Usopp always gets.
Right.
I think it's because Buggy was a previously established antagonist.
I'm just saying, they
Pretty
could
important
literally
character. It's
have
like we
been
cannot have Buggy knowing what the One Piece was. It would
They
break
could have
his
literally been
series.
like,
kind of.
Toki's 800-year-old immune system can't deal with these viruses, and I would have accepted
Oh, yeah,
that,
that would've been
instead
better,
of,
yeah.
oh, she's just,
Yeah.
her body's just relieved. So it made her sick.
It's I don't think it's as sloppy as Sabo's whole
Newspaper
Amnesia.
thing that
Amnesia.
reading the Sabo reading the
I
newspaper.
don't
Okay,
consider
yeah.
it outside
Yeah.
the fact that we know Sabo's created later, but like it's the first time Oda ever used amnesia in the story with Sabo.
Not the
Not
last.
the last,
We've
but
still got
definitely
that.
the first.
But who knows when he came up with the idea for Sabo? I'm not saying like, oh, like Ace has the S with the X over it. That Sabo confirmed. I'm not saying that, but we know at least by the end of Marineford, Sabo was
Yes,
created.
definitely.
Right.
Was a thing by
I think
then,
it was
but
pretty early on.
Sabo just being a top level revolutionary, and somehow Ace never hearing about him, or the fact
I
that
think
Sabo probably heard news about the great pirate Porcus D. Ace, or even the news about this upstart pirate named
this is the
Monkey
thing
D.
we
Okay, to
lose.
be fair, wasn't
But
it the
I guess
combination
since
of
the fact
Yeah.
that I didn't have
Yeah, yeah,
Sakazuki
yeah.
Steven-
in the
Steven
newspaper
explained
article
that.
ahead of that.
It has to do with the way in Japan all that information got delved to him, which kickstarted his memory, and it's something that is honestly lost in translation.
I don't want to spend the Odin segment talking about Sabo. Though.
But, yeah, so going to the last island and leaving to come back to Wano, it's another interesting aspect of the legend and the reality of Odin writing in this journal about how, oh, the stoic crew of the King of the Pirates, nobody shed a tear, and they're all weeping terribly. It's a great sort of contrast and comedic moment.
But we got to talk about we have to talk about the journey with Roger.
Yeah.
Because it is I this felt like fan service more so in the
Yes,
anime and the
yes.
manga, but this felt like
Things
a
are
reunion tour.
are glazed over in the manga in like a panel, and we get like a quarter of an episode.
The episodes were like
And I
love letters to the fans about the different
yes,
islands.
absolutely.
I can feel.
I
it.
think I
I'm
even
feeling
said on the
love.
podcast when like Gonfall is name dropped at the beginning of a chapter, and I'm like, Toei, you better show me Gonfall saying goodbye to the Roger Pirates, and they did.
They showed him calling with the whistle the octopus balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was so fun.
It definitely, like, I think even like if you read through the entire series, it's great. But speaking for myself, someone who's been reading the series nearly 20 years, to see all that like again in the modern era, but also being experienced by the Roger Pirates of all things, like I know for a fact we're gonna get all that again at the end of the series, and I'm gonna cry. I am gonna cry like a little bitch.
They're gonna
But,
play memories over it like they did.
I
Yeah,
love
They got to use the original version though. This
Yeah.
version wasn't as good.
I love that we got to see Gunfall. We got to see people on Fishman Island, Neptune, Charlie. We got to see Frankie, which is insane to me. I could not believe that we got to see Frankie as a kid. I thought that was such an interesting combination.
And he stood 6 feet away from Gold Roger.
right? And literally,
But he didn't care.
we,
He was a
uh,
shitty little kid. He didn't care.
Can we? One of my biggest gripes, I think so, with the anime version, and I'm trying my best. It is the Water 7 segment where they talk with Tom, and
Frankie doesn't look the right age.
yeah, I sorry, I still crack up at the panel of a young snot-nosed Frankie just covered in dirt and just Kozuki Oden leaning in, like, hey, you want, you're an orphan? You want to join up with us? I think
He's just like orphan. That's hilarious.
I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best to get the timeline right, and I could be wrong here. I think at this point, God, I don't even know how many years have passed.
Frankie's 36
God-
now. Frankie's 36 today.
Well, I got to realize, like, I think Odin was at least with the Whitebeard Pirates for a little under 2 years because he had 2 children born.
Yeah.
On that ship. Frankie's flashback, I think, is takes place 24 years from the current timeline.
Back
But
2 years
when
ago. 26 years from this current timeline.
24 from the current timeline.
Okay.
And during that flashback, 2 years prior was when Frankie first washed up on the shores of Water 7. And I believe that is the young Frankie that's depicted in this portion
Correct.
of the flashback, and it's a slightly
Well,
younger
it's-
Frankie.
he-
Something to keep in mind is kids age really quick, and I that's some of my issues I have. I think more so with the anime. So I think my rough estimation was when the Roger Pirates go back to Water 7. This is 25 years from the current timeline. So Frankie isn't quite a 12-year-old yet, and yeah, I'm about to explain my boring reason to why I think he's depicted a lot older in the anime. With animation, if characters are showing up, like main characters, you often have to have character designs for them. You got to have character design sheets. We got to know what they look like so we could draw and animate them at all different angles. I think they just thought, oh, let's just pull the design sheet that we had for Frankie from when we did the flashback way back, and that was the 12-year-old Frankie. So I think there's a little bit of inconsistency there. If I'm wrong,
point out something
I'm
within
wrong.
that
but-
episode. Tom's design, his facial design, they did not know how to animate him. Like there's a moment when he's talking to Roger, and he's like not looking at him because he's still staring out forward. When he's like at least 4 feet taller than Roger, he'd have to look down. And same thing with Kokoro. They were probably going off older designs, which a lot of that team hadn't worked on those Water 7 in its lobby episodes. They don't have as an understanding of how to approach those characters as probably people who worked from that show, because animation production,
Those episodes were in
it's a
2008.
team of people. Some people were probably already
even earlier than
retired
that.
or moved on to other productions by then. So
Water 7, that's 2005.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
That's right.
so maybe
Um,
that's part
and-
of it. You're right, where they were just like, here's an old design for the Frankie we had during those flashbacks. You just have to reuse that, because Oda only had to draw those characters once on that panel. They didn't have to do multiple scenes.
Oh, yeah.
with them.
And like when you're a manga artist, you don't really have to consider like, well, I gotta have my character sheet for young Frankie so we could be consistent. Like that's why you'll see characters often change up their clothes a lot more in a manga
Right.
as opposed to an anime. But this leads into like another, I feel like it's an inconsistent thing, or just something that I have a hard time keeping track of, is how old Shanks and Buggy are supposed to be.
I think they're supposed to
Because-
be in their mid-teens by the end of it.
Yeah,
Like they're supposed to be like
I think
14
this-
years
I
old by
think
the end of it.
They don't look it.
I think this is the anime.
No.
Yeah, I think this is the anime kind of just sticking with those young kid designs throughout most of this flashback.
No, I'll blame,
I think
I'll
there's
blame
even
Oda.
inconsistencies.
I'll blame Oda for this one. If you look back at the Shanks
Yeah.
Buggy flashback during Buggy's arc, they look old. They look like young. They look like young.
They look
look like young men. They look
Yeah.
like late teens at least. But like now, even when they finish with Roger, they still look like 14, maybe 12.
Well, so and we find out in this flashback that scene of them fighting over what is colder, the North or the South Pole, takes place right before they
Right.
get to Water 7. So, maybe they're supposed to be teenagers at that point, but the anime still has them as
because
young
like
kids.
it's also harder to show like slight progressions in aging.
Yeah.
Like I said, kids grow like weeds.
unless you do like a rapid kind of like, okay, now they're a head taller, different hair, different clothing constantly, and that's gonna cost the production a little bit. So it's harder to keep track of that versus just like, it's Shank's buggy.
Yeah,
they're gonna look the same way within 3 years.
Can I?
Because it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sam.
I'm sorry. Just like in chapter 958, before the flashback starts, it's the start of Act 3 of Wano. We get that brief little cold open flashback with Oden on Roger's ship, and the Shanks and Buggy that are depicted in that, like they are teenagers, and these are the same designs we see when Oden, Roger and Oden leave the ship. So I think the aging is more consistent in the manga than it is in the anime.
No, I think they look like younger kids in this flashback in the manga than they do when they in that buggy arc. They look more like older teenagers versus younger teenagers.
But I will say the panel of them waving goodbye on the ship, they are wearing the same clothes that they are in.
This is true, but I think that's also Oda's
flashback.
style has adapted a little more than how he portrays children in his series, even teens.
I don't know. It's not the most important thing, but it's something that just ever since that episode aired with Frankie was bugging me. I was like, that's not the right Frankie, and also like, but it's like how like Goten and Trunks in Dragon Ball Super still look the same as they did in the Buu saga, and I'm like, no, come on, kids age. Stop doing this. But that's just animation. Like it's time consuming and money consuming to keep designing different ages for characters. So
can I just introduce a different mystery at this point? What happened to the road poneglyph at the sea forest on Fishman Island? Where is it?
On the moon.
Because at that point, Roger says that he'd already stolen the rubbing of Big Mom's road poneglyph, and then we got the ones from Zoe and the one from Wano. When
the one on Wano, I guess, is the one Kaido has now.
Yeah, because it's not the one that's in the palace. That's not a red.
Supposedly there's one on Wano too, which we haven't found in the series yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So wherever
I assume that's the one Kaido has. Yeah.
Yeah, but where is the one that was in the sea?
I think
that's
someone
good question.
took it. Obviously, maybe Shanks.
Well, obviously,
because it would make sense for him because he saw it there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. I guess he does have.
I had the timeline backwards. I used to assume that was Big Mom. Big Mom had taken it, but he already has the rubbing of Big Mom's road poneglyph.
Yeah,
at that
he mentions
point,
that. I think Oda specifically is tracking that for us.
It's one of those times where you just get cross-eyed.
All right, so we got like 15, 20 minutes left, I think, in this segment. But let's talk about.
Sorry to derail that too much with just the crazy ramblings of someone who's watched One Piece for far too long.
Let's talk about the end of Kozuki Oden. He comes back to Wano, and things are not right, and he's eventually hoodwinked into like doing this shameful dance every week for 5 years in order to. He thinks, they'll leave the country and take their weapons with them. I don't know why he thought it would work, but I mean, there were the hostages, obviously, but man,
no villain in One Piece has ever kept a promise.
No.
Oden is slightly.
That's why they're villains.
Even with his like time out into the seas, but like Luffy's kind of the same way. Like all throughout Impel Down, Luffy trusted Buggy.
Yeah, well, and also like it's interesting. Born with different circumstances. Luffy was born, to have no responsibilities from birth, essentially. Oden was born to be the leader of a country. So he sort of chafes against that. And ultimately, because he doesn't necessarily want that until later, he comes to realize that it is something that he wants. He is very, he's very,
at the very least he wants to do it
better than
I don't think he wants it, but he feels like he has a responsibility to Wano and to his family.
Yeah, he says it flat out to Orochi's face. It's like, I don't want to be the Shogun, but you're not going to be Shogun. I think it's revealed later when Orochi pays Kuri a visit, and he's like, I want to build more factories. I think this is one of those times when and taking in a manga one chapter at a time on a weekly basis, and then talking about said chapter for 60 to 90 minutes. I think a lot of things slip through the cracks, and I don't quite understand what's
I'd say
happening.
there's something else.
And I think it might be a hindsight thing, and maybe it's also, I think the anime made the deal a lot more clearer in that sequence when
Yeah,
he
it goes
showed,
by
like,
very fast in the manga.
and once again,
But
panel page restraints. There's only so much you could get in.
There's another point to this, which kind of never gets resolved either in the manga or the anime yet. Is the fact that Kuri was a lawless kingdom without a daimyo for a long time, and we know that Orochi's family used to be a daimyo. I think we may have talked about this, or hinted the fact that Orochi's family might have been the original daimyo of Kuri. So it's basically him reclaiming that land by saying, like, hey, build factories here because, my shitty grandfather tried to assassinate the shogun.
Well, my whole point was just that, like, the fact that there's a deal has been made between Odin and Orochi is a lot more clearer in the anime.
See, so the thing that has not been resolved, though, is a part of the deal was that Odin wanted a boat of some kind.
No. He wanted them to leave on their boat.
You see, it's totally confusing in the manga, or at least it's revealed
in the anime. Because in the anime, when Orochi's like, "Oh, I want to build weapons," and Odin's like, "So, Orochi, about that boat you promised me."
Correction. It's a lot more clearer. Because Kaido explains it during the execution. What it was is, I think Odin made deals like, oh, you guys build like your ships, you build like your fleet, and you all sail away. Like you have like your fleet, you could leave now. Mm-hmm. And
that's just.
But it was never about the fleet. It was never about the fleet for Orochi, especially because he wants to destroy the country. And this is I guess Odin didn't really anticipate that. Like he just wanted to destroy it rather than take it from him.
I'll read this because this is it was Shinobu who explained all this like she was the one that just yells at all the citizens. We're like, oh man, Orochi kind of sucks, and it's a shame because the citizens of Wano don't like Orochi, but they feel powerless, and then they're just like, well, Odin tried, but he failed, so he sucks too. And when Shinobu got pissed off at them and explained everything because she was hidden up in the ceiling. Listening to everything, she says, I quote, he trusted their promise that 5 years later they would agree to sail away from the country when they were done building their ships.
Yeah.
So what they were built, so like the weapons factories, because
also remember he had
fleets
captives in the back room, and also poisoning people with poison arrows, which is another common thing in the series. I hope kind of gets tied together. What pirate crews are using poison arrows and who are their victims.
Like now, like reading through this entire flashback again, it's like things are a lot more clearer to me now. So I think it's like I said, like taking these in 1 week at a time, it's some like you realize some lines are drops of foreshadowing that aren't gonna be elaborated on, so it can get pretty confusing. But honestly, I think everything holds up pretty well going back and rereading it, I will say. I guess we were talking about his execution now.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of getting towards the end of the segment. We got like 10 minutes, I think. Let's talk about the execution. It's a really heart-wrenching scene, obviously. Like to have them realize at the end, we hated this guy. We thought he was a fool. We thought he was doing all these things just because he was a fool and there was no reason behind it. But he was doing it to protect us, and they had this realization all too late, and it just sort of crushes them.
Yeah, this is kind of a recurring element in One Piece, which is the strongest people are the ones who kind of don't put the reputation first, like Luffy and Zoro not fighting back in Mocktown, or Odin like being willing to take credit for like the Boar attack. And
That's a really good comparison, Sam.
yeah, like there's like being the guy who's willing to just do the thing you want to do or do the thing you believe is right, regardless of and letting other people come to the conclusion on their own that they were wrong and you were right about something.
Yeah, Odin has never been someone to go after the fame. And honestly, even with his execution, he's not like, oh, I'm not going to prove to these people that like they shouldn't hate me. He just is doing his best to save the lives of his samurai.
Yeah, he even knew that he would be. They were not going to let him live.
No, there was no
he
way.
knew that time. Okay, they're lying to us, but I need to preserve my retainers.
And even if I make the 1 hour time limit, like, you know, I changed the method of execution to a firing squad a minute ago.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
and
fuck
and
off.
this might.
We talked about how Orochi lied to him before. Odin knew that there was like he'll just lie
Yeah.
again. There's no way
He
getting
might
him.
have known at this point that
But
his
Odin-
life was already over. Maybe based on what he read at Laughtell.
Well, there was no way he was going to survive being boiled in oil, but Odin used the situation to his advantage. It's like, I could be the martyr that I am, and I could win these people back over and also save the lives of my vassals. Like that, this was also a ploy that it's like, my men can't die.
Yeah.
They need to survive. So I could spin
also-
this in a way
it
where I
also-
save them and also win
Yeah,
back
and he
the
wins
hearts
the
of the
hearts of
citizens.
citizens by exploiting how much of a douchebag that Orochi is. That he even, in front of everybody, said, all right, you can live if you survive an hour. And he still welched right on that deal right there.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in
Also,
Wano
it wasn't
likes-
helping when the citizens are discovering that, we're surrounded by a Gestapo
These
of
pirates, and samurai.
pirates and men with poison arrows.
Yeah,
and swords
it's like
and stuff.
before, like Odin's deal happened in secret, but now it's like no, everyone got to see right there with this public execution what was really going on.
And that's not even taking into account literally the execution itself was absolutely brutal. Like what a scene! Odin holding up all the samurai literally on his back, just keeping them alive while submerged in boiling oil. Like how crazy!
To be fair, we don't
the
know how
anime's
much
gonna be
work.
so
We
good.
don't know how much work that Hare was putting into.
You're right. It was Hare doing all the work.
It all comes full circle with our potential episode titles. I want to make sure we get in some final thoughts, and just talking about this flashback as a whole. I'll just say that I remember going through it on the podcast, and I was admitting, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting fatigue. Like Odin's great and all, but no, the Straw Hats are great. I want to see the Straw Hats again. And this is the longest One Piece flashback.
It's like 15 chapters, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Wano's heading to be the longest arc in
It already
story
is,
as
I think,
well.
now.
Yeah. But like, yeah, I was getting burnt out reading this week to week, and going back and rereading it, I know all the story beats already. I was getting emotional right up at the moment when the Akazaya 9 were fleeing and Odin was about to die, and they're reflecting on their memories of him. I'm just reading the manga and I'm getting emotional. So that kind of that says a lot on how well this backstory is aged for me.
And I think that I mean we'll touch about it in the later segment, but the anime has been killing it with this flashback. Sure, there's points where it's like a little slow, but wow, the team has really been doing a fantastic job. It's like a lot of the scenes are elevated because the way the animation has been, or the voice acting, or just extra filler that they put in that is like implied. Yeah.
And
Implied
they've
filler.
been allowed to pick the pace up. Like it's not just like one
Mhm.
chapter per episode or less. Like they are getting this is paced the way you would ideally want it to be paced if they had the freedom to do so.
Like the good old days.
Which I
I mean,
think
I
is,
truly-
is Toei saying like we need to be back to Luffy eventually here.
Right.
Possibly. I was fearful of that at the beginning because I felt like even though actually they added a lot of padding to the early episodes, I thought, I don't know, I feel like they're getting through this too fast. No, I think they're giving this all the time it needs, and the anime definitely is a huge factor in like I personally think this is one of the best flashbacks of the entire run.
Yeah.
I don't agree with
It's
that,
also
but
it's
good.
it's half Well, hear me out. It's half Odin's story and the history of Wano, and half a love letter to all things.
But like one of the reasons I won't sign off on being one of the best is the fact I think it might be doing too much work. It might be being too convoluted. Where I feel like Oda has more effective flashbacks when they're a little simpler and straightforward.
Yeah, there's like what I think the weakness of the flashback is there's so much plot and like previously established lore about like, okay, they were on Whitebeard's ship and then they're on Roger's ship and then this character was here and this character, like the manga has to spend like a decent amount of time just like making that clear, or at least like just like here's the story. Oh, also now we got to explain why Izo is on Whitebeard's ship. Now here's the story again.
See, I get that, but at this point we're so late in the series that I do want to connect the dots. Like, it's fine having like big stuff that happened in the past. Like Skypia's flashback, we didn't know any of those characters. We got some general stuff that happened, but now we're at these points where like I want to know how Izo ended up on the Whitebeard crew, like from Wano, or like now how he's back in Wano and dealing with all of that. I want to get these connections.
Getting that information is good, but like literally, this is the Whitebeard Oden Roger flashback in a lot of ways, and I think I would have preferred an Oden flashback and then a Roger flashback, and then potentially like how that connects to Roger, as opposed to kind of like doing a speed run of it in the middle of this one flashback.
We're gonna get another Roger.
I know that because we got to do it wrong.
There's no way we're not. I don't know if we're gonna get another Whitebeard one. Maybe with the Rocks Pirates.
Like Rocks Pirates is gonna be huge for Roger.
Yeah, we'll get the God Valley.
Yeah, probably.
Deal.
My thoughts were, this is all the stuff we've known Roger has done, or at least like the fact that, what did we know about Roger before this? Like, okay, we know he's been to Sky Island. We know that he commissioned Tom to build like his ship. This flashback was, all right, we covered all that. So the next time we do a Roger flashback, all new content. Yeah.
No, I get that. I'm just saying, like, I think some of the when I think about like super emotional flashbacks I've had from reading One Piece and even some of the anime, is that it punches me harder when there's a focus on an idea that resonates. Not more so than like, oh, because I've been reading this series for 20 years, it's nice to get all the information, because this story is impactful. For I look at even Big Mom's, like 2 chapters, and just seeing what that little girl goes through and how she becomes a dynamo. I was like, yeah, that stuck with me more than like all the specific.
Now she's a big fat dynamo.
Yeah, all the specific beats in Oden, because like Oden like itself can be its own series. Yeah,
I will admit Oden lived, a pretty full life. I mean, he only lived for so long, but he did what he wanted to mostly. He he saw Laugh Tale. Like, he really did, and he had like.
Hey, I didn't start a harem war.
He learned the purpose of like his angst. His angst was about being confined in this country, and there was a reason connected to that rule after he went to Raftel, and it really gave him his purpose in life after that, like having that, fulfilling that responsibility that he had rejected as a youth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any sort of concluding thoughts, or do you want to move on to the anime recap?
Just want to say, like, it was an absolute pleasure revisiting this story.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be hard for me to reread it, like, because I'm familiar with it, and I'm like, I'd probably read it slow. This was kind of hard for me to put down. I really enjoyed rereading this, so I have nothing but praise for this flashback. It's aged very well for me.
All right, let's well, shall we move on to the anime recap then of Oden?
More Oden. Yes.
Yes. All right, let's do it.
This is the anime recap for episodes 970, 971, and later we have an anime recap for 972 with animator Henry Thurlow. I'm your host Sam, and today with me we have, once again as always, we have Ed.
Hello. Good to be back.
Also joining us today is our less than beloved friend Jill.
Sam, you're my mortal enemy now. We have to fight.
Although you did give me those starbursts, so I think we're back to 0.
Okay. We'll bring it all back to 0.
All right, Hody.
And that voice you heard was Rick and Morty's own Brian Newton.
Hey, Sam.
And also, we have host of this episode in general, Steve Yurko.
The general, me, Steve.
Yeah. General Steve. All right. So the first of these episodes we're going to cover today is 970, which is Sad News, the opening of the Great Pirate Era. The title card begins at 2 minutes and 54 seconds.
It's Morgan's depressed cousin. Sad news, Morgan.
Writes the obituaries.
Amazing.
All right.
So Odin's eyes are glowing red as he heads out to fight Orochi. He's jumping over the bridge and in front of the full moon, kind of looking like a chopper in front of the moon on Drum Island.
I kind of wish Alex was here because maybe he could like back me up here. Anybody else get Forrest Gump vibes from Odin?
Yes.
Running across the country.
Now that you say it, that's what it was.
Reading the manga, I kind of forgot. Oh yeah, you got to travel pretty
No, I
far
picked up on that.
from Kuri all the way to the flower
It doesn't
capital.
seem like it because I swear in Wano they get everywhere within the blink of an eye.
That's
but,
another issue
yeah.
I have.
Unless
with this arc.
the Big Mom's with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's running. He's running for so long that the sun comes up, and he's just kind of running across the village side dirt roads. The kind of farmers and people in the rice paddies are just kind of in surprise as this is a very serious scene, but Odin's like very goofily running with his like arms pumping. Morning comes. Is this new music? I didn't recognize what this was. If this was like Stampede music or something.
I think
Not sure.
I think it was
Yeah, I
something
didn't
from
catch that.
Stampede. I know what you're talking about.
But once he makes it into the flower capital, people are cheering for his return. They're like, yes, finally. We've been suffering so much under Orochi. The Kozuki clan is back. Odin is back. And Odin makes it into the castle, and he's confronting Orochi, who's freaking out. Like, think of what will happen to this country if you kill me. And Odin says, I will, after I kill you. And then Orochi's freaking out, like, I forgot he was crazy. And Odin attacks, but there's a mysterious barrier in the way, protecting Orochi. And the old man, the Biwa player, we see that his fingers are crossed, and he explains that he's using his barrier fruit powers. And his name is Kurozumi Senimaru. So he's part of the family. And then Kurozumi Higurashi makes her appearance. And Odin's trying to like get his throne back. He's doing the whole, it's like, I don't want to be Shogun, but hey, I'd be a better Shogun than you.
I gotta say,
And,
in the anime, it seems like she does not have to touch her face to make the change.
Yeah, there's a few, like, I think what the implication is, I think, because like, the screen gets kind of blurry when she does the change, so it kind of looks like her hand is, like, nudging to her cheek real
No,
fast.
I, like, deliberately looked at it,
Yeah.
but there's points where, like, she's, like, her
She
hands
just-
are in front of her and she changes.
Yeah,
so.
she just changes. Maybe it's a hint that it's not the same fruit we associate
I mean,
it as.
it might be Bon Clay just hasn't gotten to that point yet. It might just be
Sure.
whatever.
She might have mastered
Or just the
it.
anime.
Awakened clone abilities.
Yeah.
She's
There
awakened
we
her
go.
clone.
I don't have to touch anybody. I think that's post COVID awakening.
Yeah, Oda's like, don't
It's
touch
like, you know
your
what?
face.
You know what? I shouldn't touch you. Just in case. I'll just look
Just
at
to
you.
be
I'll
safe.
Look at her. She's probably already dying from COVID.
Yeah.
Were her teeth
COVID
always black?
blackens your teeth. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, they're explaining how she, took on the appearance of Sukiyaki in order to fool the public and position Orochi as the proxy shogun. And this is all a scheme. Orochi has no intention of giving the throne back. And poisoned arrows are raining in on the crowd as Kaido circles the capital. And it's big and ominous, and people are getting hurt. And a few hours later, Odin returns from the castle and just takes his clothes off. And just starts dancing around, acting like a fool, reciting the ingredients of Odin.
This song is really
that-
catchy.
Absolutely.
Brings us to the eye catch of the episode. And they come back and they repeat the scene, but with new animation. So we get new animation of him taking his clothes off, and then kicking his leg up in the air.
It could have been worse.
Smiling and
could have been worse. Sam, Orochi could have brought Oden out into the middle of the flower capital, pull down his pants, and say, "Now march, blow kisses to the people. Look, everyone, it's the man who boils."
He's dancing, he's singing, he's showing off his creamy hamstrings to the world. Basically the people become very disappointed. They all had their hopes up. They all expected him to be their hero, and here he was just acting like a total idiot for reasons they can't understand. And this goes on for a while. Children invent jump rope songs. Just like, 1, 2, Odin's coming for you. This is just something has happened. He was told, some kind of blackmail we don't know at this point. Oden won't even tell the Akazaya 9. So I guess he's going into town, he's doing his dance, he's going home, and then he gets ready to do it again the next day. It's his routine. And his friends are all like, "Please, Oden, please tell us." And he's like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about." And he's got some like weird, like just like face scruff doesn't look right on him.
Yeah. There's one point in the Oden flashback. Oden's like, "I think I'll try facial hair," and I think Akazai 9 were like, "Nah, it comes in all patchy." My lord, you should.
He had to be going to social distance isolation. He can't go to a barber. No one's touched his face for a while. COVID.
I bet Whitebeard and Roger were making fun of him. They're like, "You can't grow a mustache."
It's true.
Wano beard.
It's just a sad stash for him.
Yeah, he was really disappointed. He tried.
Kozuki sad stash.
One of these days, he returns home and little baby Momonosuke is like, "Papa, the newspaper's here, but you want to read it?" And Owen's like, "Yes, son, I would love to read this. Oh my God, my friend is dead." And he has to go run to the beach and have a cry about that, and laughing about how amazing Roger was. And we get a recreation of Roger's execution that we've seen a million times, but it's new. It's newly drawn.
Roger was like, "I need to change into my crappy 1999 clothes." And I guess, fine, I'll wear a shirt.
Mihawk is there.
Roger's like, "I'll turn myself in, but when you execute me, can I show off my glorious abs?" No.
Did they show Crocodile? Did they show the back of Crocodile's
yes,
head?
with the cigar, yeah. And little kid smoker as well.
Oh, it was so cute.
I think this is really great for people that have never seen episode 0. That's locked in instant ramen hell or whatever the hell it is.
Well, chapter 0 is in the second box set,
yeah.
but it's not available on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Episode 0 was commissioned by a noodle company or something
as a Strong World tie-in.
Yes. So, this is the next best thing. We see a lot of the characters that were shown there, and also Young Smoker from Anime Filler.
Right.
He's there too.
But it's canon now.
Which I was happy to see.
Wait, is that Anime Filler?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was.
I don't think.
That got addressed in the anime, but that was never in the manga.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, and something that struck me is like you got the voice in the crowd being like, "Where's the One Piece? Where's the treasure?" Which I think in the SBS, Oda said it was he confirmed that the guy who shouted that is supposed to be like the ponytail guy from the
Most
whatever, but also in the anime it was a completely different person. In the original, it was just some dude.
Yeah, things are gonna get right.
I bet that guy tells that story to everyone he meets. Be like, "Hey, did you know that I was the guy who asked Gold Roger where the One Piece was?
Oh,
yeah, that was me."
Guaranteed.
This guy has it in his Twitter profile. How come I'm not verified yet?
That was me, guys.
Him asking why he's not verified is his pinned tweet. So Oden finishes crying. He's got his face is all red and his nose is all snotty. It's like, "You lived quite a life." To be continued. We move on to episode 971, Raid, Oden and the Akazaya 9. Before the title card, there's kind of a cold open where we see the Animal Kingdom pirates versus the Gecko pirates. We see young, lean Gecko Moria clashing with young, not so lean Kaido.
I mean, it is an important thing to fill in though, because this is when Moria's crew is destroyed, but he also gets Ryuma's corpse. So
yeah, and the narrator.
I
explains
totally forgot this was in the manga too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a,
So
it's just a
great.
panel.
couple of
on
panels,
manga.
couple of
No,
panels.
one panel. I
One
think.
panel.
Oh,
Yeah.
one panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So killing a few
No, I
birds
totally
with one stone.
And I forgot that would have been like, oh yeah, Hogback is with the Gecko Pirates at this time, so he's probably just like, we're gonna go kick Kaido's ass. You go steal a corpse and
God, I wish we could have
and a
gotten a
sword.
scene with Hogback and Orochi. Just the same VA.
Maybe-
that would have been a hell of a thing.
Hogback in the like the napkin, the thief mask.
Yeah.
It just barely fits underneath his giant schnoz.
That's amazing.
We come back to Oden dancing and the Akazai 9 telling them that like they're going to stand by Oden no matter what. They still want to serve him, even though his reputation is in the trash. Title card begins at 4 minutes and 24 seconds, and it opens with Hiyori and Momo coming to hug their dad and just telling him how much they love his dance.
I mean, that's sad
Oden-
and cute at the same time.
I know. Oden's like looking over at Toki like, I mean, hey, you gonna divorce me? Like, I'm not gonna tell you why I'm doing this, so you might as well just like leave me.
Well,
But
like,
Toki's like, oh, shut up.
what would Toki do? Like, where would she go? Like, she's stuck on Wano. Everyone knows that she's your wife. She's got 2 kids. Like, come on, Oden.
Well, suddenly this doesn't seem as supportive as I think the story
You
was
gotta do-
intending.
Then you gotta do paperwork. It's just divorces are very
yeah, they'll
expensive.
have to get 2 houses, or maybe they just kick Oden out.
So we meet Hyogoro's wife, just in time to learn to love her so she can die.
She's a lovely lady.
I do like this scene of like Hyogoro and Oden and Hyogoro's wife, and they're just kind of all chatting, and they're all just like, "Oh, we love you. Oh, who cares about what people think of you? We're the Yakuza." 3 years passed. He's been doing this for this is now up to 5 years, I think, total. And it's Oden's dancing in the snow. He's dancing in the rain. Orochi and the Oniwa Banshu show up. Of course, Orochi has to have like a guy going on his hands and knees so he can like step on him and get down from his wagon. Oden bows, and Orochi's like, "Oh, this curry! I can't believe you made such a nice place out of it. Let's build some weapons factories." And Oden asks, like, "Oh, what about the ships we were talking about? What about our promise?" And Orochi's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm a One Piece villain. I don't keep promises." And then the background turns to like this green fire thing. There's a lot of like just funky color background stuff in this episode.
Yeah. We should build unaffordable apartment complexes here.
Yeah, Orochi is taunting Oden, saying he's got Hyogoro captured and is probably gonna kill him soon, and he's already killed like all of Hyogoro's men and Hyogoro's wife, and like that really makes Oden snap. And then Orochi basically just says, "Oh, your kids are cute. Would be a shame if something happened to them."
Yeah.
And so he cackles and then he leaves, and just being a total dick. Like Oden's crying about this, and he hears Hyo and Hyo's wife like over his shoulder, and he looks over it. Now the background's like all tie dye, and like everyone's like all the people that like love and support him are like, "Oh, we love you, we support you." His kids are like, "Daddy, I want to be just like you when we grow up," and it's all ominous because everyone's gonna die, and hear the big
Don't
drums.
look at me.
The big taiko drums in the background as Oden's like crying in despair, and it rains. And then the Akazai 9 appear behind him, kneeling. And Oden says, like, let's go kill Kaido. And his friends are like, yes, this is what we've been waiting to hear.
Yeah, they're like, finally.
Finally. And we got the cool Magic Hour sunset as they like put on their big hats and cross the bridge. Looking like something out of a classic movie.
Yeah, or like the walk to Aang Park, which the Straw Hats did.
Yeah. That brings
Except
us
this was
to-
actually in the manga.
Mm-hmm.
That brings us to the eye catch of the episode. And we've got the kids hanging out. I like the shot of Toki doing Hiyori's hair. It's very cute.
Mhm.
The
like the
kids
drop kick.
playing Yeah, the kids playing around.
The dropkick cracked me up every time.
Hiyori gets a few drop kicks in throughout these episodes.
And they call her the Rainmaker.
Yeah, she has no sense of tone.
I need to see Hiyori do that in a like modern One Piece. I need to see.
oh,
her
that'd
do
be
that.
I
awesome.
love that they had
I
that.
think we're gonna get
I did
it.
love that the anime had that.
Yeah,
That like fantasy.
I want to do him
of
in those
Momo.
shoes that she wore as Komurasaki.
Well, that'd be great. Maybe Orochi's like, it's like Momonosuke's unprotected. Now I'll kill him. And
No, that's
Hiyori
how
comes in
Hiyori kills Orochi.
Death from
She just
above.
puts on those shoes and just
The last head.
with
Just
like
stiletto
with golf
to the brain.
golf cleats.
Wearing those big disco shoes with the goldfish
now I'm like sad that that's not going to happen.
Listen, we'll see.
I have hope.
in them.
Same chance
And,
as Toki being alive.
Yeah, so they come to this big hilly mountain area, and there's already hundreds of Kaido's men waiting for them. And Dragon Kaido appears from the mist, and he's like, "Oh, we knew you were here because there might be a spy in your castle." And yeah, basically Kaido and Orochi's promise was a lie. Should have seen that coming. And we got this cool shot of Oden seeing like all of his loved ones like reflected in his sword before going into the fight, and all the Akazai 9 big fight, like lots of different kinds of like action animation cuts as they're slicing dudes and people just turn into sakura petals.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah, it's a metaphor for blood.
It's
and
a cool
guts.
one. Yeah.
The transition was really neat.
Kaido
did
appearing
notice-
out of the fog here. Ooh.
I noticed that in Kanjuro's action shots, he doesn't actually like make contact with anyone. He just like waves his hands and like a bunch of flower petals come from the sides of the
I
screen.
can't imagine why that would happen.
Like, yeah, why isn't he hitting anybody? Why doesn't it feel like he's trying, guys? And then like as the action scene settles down, the petals like turn suddenly into blood. It's like, oh, that's what they were the whole time. And you have Yasuie. He is visiting Oden's family at Oden's request. This is where we're getting the drop kick specifically, where like all this we're cross cut between like all this serious action. Yasu talking about how if Oden loses, this country is finished, and then just like Hiyori in the background going,
I think that's in the manga panel too, for this moment.
To be continued. General thoughts on these 2 episodes, you guys?
Two really great episodes, especially the Akazaya 9 sequence fighting the Animal Kingdom pirates. Phenomenal. It's
I was always really. I guess you guys can go first. I usually save mine for last.
Jill,
Go ahead, Ed.
you got anything?
Oh, I mean, I was gonna go off what Steve said. I thought that scene was so cool. The Akazai, because at one point I was like, oh, maybe this is going on a little long, but like, because it was going through every single one of them, but they were all different. And there's different angles that they were shown at. They were using different like sword styles. I thought it was really, really cool to watch. Animal Kingdom pirates were super menacing when they popped out. And Kaido is just this giant. It's so cool, just this giant dragon coming down. Like it's this fight between like man and myth that I love the way the anime did it. I think it really like expounded on how much of a struggle it is.
Yeah, like the fact that the Animal Kingdom pirates in that last episode kind of like populate the mountains, so it feels like the entire terrain is made up of them. Specifically, how like Kaido himself was coiled around that one mountain is good. And I thought like the previous episode.
Oh yeah, that's a great shot.
Yeah, I thought the previous episode did some good stuff too. Like Odin's song is like really catchy. Like even in my head, I'm hearing it. And Roger's execution scene was very reminiscent of episode 0. So, like Steve said, if you hadn't seen that episode, now you basically did. You got to see Hunky Doflamingo, which everyone lost their mind over. I was like, "What? You guys? Where have you been?" He's been a hunk this whole time. I thought the episodes were good. They were serviceable for sure.
Ed, did you have?
Oh no, these were great episodes, but they're harder to watch in that they're sort of dread-inducing. Of like all the cheerful Roger and Whitebeard episodes, we get into this, and It's just, it's just going to be emotionally heartrending, and like that transition of the cherry blossoms turning into blood is sort of really emblematic of of both episodes of this entire third act of Odin's flashback. Really, it's just I didn't really get tired of this at any point, despite how like dread-inducing it can feel. So I really enjoyed both of them.
Yeah, I thought these were both strong episodes. I think that the second of the two episodes had more variety, but I was really happy with how the first of these two episodes executed the dancing and making Odin act like a fool. Because I remember in the manga, like that's such a tonal whiplash, and it's not really clear like what's going on, and in the anime you get a little more time to let it sink in and be like, okay, there's probably blackmail, there's probably this or that, and like the surprise of like going from the kind of intense action scene inside the castle to Odin like slowly walking out, taking his clothes off, and just like starting to dance. I feel like that worked really well, and I liked the more the playing with like colors and different visual styles that happened throughout the second of these two episodes was really cool too.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's the bulk of my thoughts. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to say before we move on to Henry's section?
I'm all good.
I think that was it.
Yeah, let's move on into the next segment.
All right, let's move on. This is the anime recap for episode 972, The End of the Battle, Odin versus Kaido. Today we have the same cast that you just heard 10 seconds ago, but we're also joined with a very special guest, Henry Thurlow, animator from Dart Shitagio, works on One Piece on occasion, and he has worked on this episode.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back. It's good to have you. You seem to specialize in animating dragons.
Well, I think I'm good at it. I think I enjoy it. I like drawing like dragons and monsters and that kind of stuff. Like I have
Armadillo Men.
as a kid, and so normally that opportunity doesn't present itself in many projects I've worked on. So I actually don't have that much experience animating dragons, but I guess it just comes naturally to me. So Kaido kind of just fits as like a perfect character for me to animate.
Right on.
The title card this week begins at 3 minutes and 26 seconds, and it opens with young Shinobu appearing in the treetops, and she's like fighting alongside Odin and the Akazaya Nine, and Odin recognizes her from when she was a child, growing up with the Oniwa Banchu.
She's quite the striking kunoichi, gotta say.
Yeah, she's very pretty.
It's never confirmed, but she's not the one who turned down Raizo, right, and sent him into the forest?
I think that's heavily implied.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I you know what? Like Raizo was he was out of his league.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? If they got together now,
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, that's gonna happen. Now that you mentioned that, that's totally because now it's fine.
They're the same shape now.
yeah, yeah, they're now both they're both Mr. and Mrs. Big Head now. So
Oh, Ed.
Raizo.
We have the same
Sorry.
scene from the episode before where Yasu's talking to Toki and saying, Wano's, this is gonna be the end of Wano if Odin doesn't win. And I like how I kind of like the character acting here, where Toki is like sewing a shirt or a robe or something. She's like holding it up, like she's barely listening, but then she like covers her face in it, like she's having like a moment where she's just kind of like trying to not let her emotions show too much. And we have this up on one of these hill mountain things. We have King and Queen, and they're both holding torches. King's is blue for some reason. I don't know why they're different.
You also notice Queen's mustache is different. It's not as long.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. And
I've grown it out.
King's outfit's different. Like
Yeah, it's like red.
It's red. There's also different buttons, and the horns aren't as long.
Interesting.
And so Dragon Kaido does a big blast breath on the forest, just completely nukes everything, sets it afire. This episode in general just like looks great, just like beat for beat. Forest sets on fire. He seems kind of pleased with himself, but then Odin comes right out of the fire like nothing's hurting him. He's coming out with a little choreography. We got some cool shots of king and queen just like fighting. They're not turning into the dinosaurs or anything. They're just swooping around and beating guys up. And Odin jumps in the air, and I think he uses Conqueror's Hockey to like knock out a crowd of guys around him, and ends up in this like kind of lengthy clash with Kaido where they're bashing against each other. There's a bit where Odin gets caught in Kaido's teeth, and he's like holding his mouth open with his swords, but then gets like blasted out. But then, like I guess Kaido's body is like snaking around just enough so that Odin can like hold himself between two sides of Kaido's body, like he's the Emperor's New Groove of just like holding yourself against the cliff sides.
God, and he
Just rewatched that.
he just like he grinds and he pulls like a Disney's Tarzan all around Kaido's body.
Oh, yeah, that
Along
happens
with
later.
With some Phil Collins music.
So Kaido, I know this is Henry's shot, but Kaido wraps Odin around. Is this his mustache?
It
He's
is.
using-
Yeah.
Mustache. Yeah.
He like wraps Odin around in his mustache and just like whips him through these mountains and just goes. And I noticed like the rubble of the mountains looks very like bubbly.
Yeah, well, I guess like maybe do your recap or like of the episode, and then I can kind of go back and I'll sit and I'll rant, because if I start ranting, then we're never gonna get to the rant.
Yeah, I have questions about the bubbles too.
All right, yeah, we'll get to you for sure. And feel free to say whatever you want to say as we go through this.
Cool.
Kaido's like, oh, I've been waiting for a guy like you, and I like how the characters kind of go partially black and white or like kind of sepia tone, but the background's still in color. And this is the Tarzan slide, like he's just going around Kaido's snake body like they're Tarzan trees. Kaido's using his flame breath, but Odin just blasting right through it, and then that culminates in the big cross slash against Kaido's belly. And there's like big stylized like Japanese characters like in like only like single frames just like popping up on the screen.
That was really cool. I like the multicolored characters. That was impressive.
Yeah. Kaido morphs back into a human, and they're like staring each other down as there's just like fire and lava and lightning going everywhere. It's like destroyed planet Namek almost. And Odin's like, don't ever come back to the land of Wano. And they just like scream a lot at each other as they're like getting close to like punching each other or like slashing each other. And then that's when Odin hears the voice of Momonosuke calling for help. Like, Daddy, help me. And he looks and he gets distracted. And there's like a beast pirate with Momo, and he's holding a knife to his neck. But then it's like, nope. Momo starts laughing. It's Higarashi's laugh. So he's been tricked. And then in the moment of distraction, Odin gets hit by Kaido and taken down. And you have this really creepy, like, laughing Momo face as
my God.
he like, turns back into the old woman.
Yeah.
Creepy Momo face. I think like this scene is very effective in the manga, with it's like, what? Oh, Momonosuke's there. And like the twist isn't revealed till after like Odin falls down.
Mhm.
But like, just the way this scene was animated, directed, and staged, loved it. I loved just like also the fact that everything's kind of just bathed in this orange hue now because of the fire. It just makes everything more intense and creepy. But yeah, the creepy Momonosuke face, fantastic.
Odin's like face down in the dirt with his like blood everywhere.
It's so interesting that this is the one thing Kaido feels compelled to apologize for.
Yeah, because
I guess that would be in the next episode, but we were talking about this. I kind of want to mention this during our Odin recap that we did, but it's interesting, like, because we saw in this last. Well, I don't want to talk too much about what recent events in the manga and what Big Mom is doing, but Kaido has somewhat of. He has some code. Orochi has nothing. Kaido has something.
I think.
Well, I just wonder if at this point in the story, Kaido's thing is already to like die in battle, like
I think
to go out like that, or if that came after.
Kaido came with his entire crew to fight Odin and the Akazaya 9, but once he realized that like Odin was like a worthy opponent, that's when he really wanted it to kind of just be like the one-on-one, didn't want the interference.
Yeah, so
Oden Oda, like Akira Toriyama often makes his villains like not characters that you hate in hindsight. Like in Dragon Ball, like Cell was almost the only one that was like never redeemed in any way, shape, or form. Even Majin Buu had like some type of version, and I feel like Oda does the same with most of his characters. Probably Blackbeard uh, and the Celestial Dragons will be like the only ones that are totally unredeemable, I think. But then again, even Blackbeard, I don't know what exactly his whole story
yeah,
is.
I mean
But like,
Blackbeard. We know we have that like shot of him as a child, like crying in front of the moon, and it's like, oh, what's his
exactly. So
story?
even he has some type of sympathetic aspect to his backstory, right? But the Yonko here, the four emperors, like when they go into the history of the Rocks pirates, like they're I think they're all gonna be likable characters to some extent. So like I definitely think Kaido and Big Mom like have a code, and I bet they were even doing like good stuff. And like I don't think the Rocks Pirates was probably like a super evil, hateful crew. I bet like their lives got turned around and they all had positive dreams and everything like that. And then something happened, right? Like the world government totally.
Well, I think it
screwed
was specifically said that the Rocks Pirates were formed with the goal of, the heist mega crew is what they were. Like they were there to make a lot of money all at once, is what it sounded like.
I suspect, and their ultimate goal being basically world domination. I suspect
It's possible.
Yeah,
So,
I
I mean,
suspect what
yeah.
the Straw Hats will inadvertently end up doing is what the Rocks set out to do, which is why the Straw Hats are so feared.
I kind of saw it the other way. Like I assume like maybe Rox himself is maybe one of the maybe he'll turn out to be one of the like ultimate like actually evil guys, and he's got this crew of people who are evil because of circumstance.
Well, and there's
Really?
and then
Funny.
and then Whitebeard.
Opposite idea. I think he's gonna be a super good guy, and I think that like all his bad reputation and everything is just slander from the world government. I think that they destroyed a really good honorable pirate crew and
You're-
like
we were
and
just
then
talking about something like
slander
that
them
too.
in the history and like erase them from the history book to the extent that they can. The little murmurs that still exist in the world.
Admittedly, that would be very fascinating if that were the case.
Yeah,
I
who
could see
knows?
it. Yeah,
Because I was thinking like Rox is going to be what to Blackbeard what Roger is to Luffy or something.
agreed. Yeah, that's what I think too. But
Um,
if it's all propaganda against them because they tried to up in the world, I would dig it.
Yeah, we pretty much know nothing, really.
It's true.
So where were
yeah,
we, Sam?
Yeah, Kaido seems he's won the fight, but he seems unsatisfied. We come to the eye catch. We come back, and even this scene of like little baby Momo and Hiyori coming to mom with their little paper ball and Toki hugging her kids, like that has a lot of animation and personality to it. We cut ahead a few days later. We see like this butterfly. It's metaphor. There's a butterfly like caught in a spider's web, and that's like in the foreground as we're watching Shinobu walking into town. Shinobu's thinking back to the night where they all got captured, and Oden basically pretended not to know her. He's like, "Oh, I'm sure she was one of my enemies, so she's not one of us. Don't like keep her prisoner with us." And so that was how she got out, because I guess the Beast Pirates just believed him.
Right? I was like, really? You're just gonna let her go? Like you're just gonna believe this guy? Okay.
We got Tsuru with a little paper Tsuru, and we have the scene of like it being announced to the public that Oden and the samurai are being sentenced to death by boiling. And I really always liked this shot, both in the anime and the manga, of like the Yakuza 9 are like kind of in one end of the cell, and then Oden's kind of like up against the bars by himself, just kind of listening, like, yep, I know. Momonosuke's food has to be tested for poisoning. So this attendant guy, I guess it's just normal that he's the one to do it.
That is
He's
the
the
same
hitman.
attendant. Sakazuki's the guy who told
Sukiyaki,
Sakazuki
yeah.
about Sukiyaki, whoops.
Yeah, Sakazuki's a very different character.
Yeah, you're right. Not in Wano as far as I can tell.
And Momo cries. He's under a lot of stress because of things
trying
to
to
be
kill him.
stressed about. Yeah.
His dad dancing in the road naked for
His
a few
dad about to
years.
die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we come to the day of the execution. The stage, like it feels very reminiscent of Zoro's execution at the beginning of the arc, with like the magistrate up at the front and kind of like a line of people on each side. Big giant boiling pot, crowd of people watching, kind of talking shit about Odin. Shinobu's there getting annoyed. And there's a big slow build up to Odin walking to the edge of the pot, and he turns around looking all cool, like, give me a chance. He's like looking at Kaido and Orochi. He's like, give me a chance. I wanna, I need to live, so I need to like make a bet with you. And the executioner getting anxious, just like ready to impatient. He's like, oh come on, just get in the pot. Whoop, slips, falls. Because we need an example of exactly how hot this boiling water is. So he falls in the pot, just lights on fire immediately, falls to the ground, crumbling to cinders. Now, I took an interest in a person in the background as he's falling, as the guy's like falling it's like on there for practically a single frame. There's just like a person in a white kimono who's very tall, and I just thought that was interesting.
Maybe that character will show up again.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, hey, Rayleigh.
Yeah.
So overtaken plays, classic, and Odin's talking to Orochi and Kaido still. He's like, set any time limit you want. If we survive that time limit, let us go. And that brings us to the end of the episode. General thoughts, you guys?
It's just building dread. It's just building that uneasy feeling. But I mean, it does it sort of expertly. Of, man, this is this big story, and this is how it's gonna end. Really, it's I don't know. It's exquisite, but it's also painful.
Yeah, this episode was gorgeous. It's also, I mean, like you say, it's like hard to watch in like an emotional way. Like visually, it's awesome, and I've loved the animation this week, and I've loved the way that the timing was. But God, it's so hard sometimes watching. Like, coming up to it, we're coming up to those end of flashback scenes that we always know we have to look forward to.
Steve, Brian?
Visually, just one of the most breathtaking episodes of the series. Just like, once again, like something I say, at nauseum, just filling in the blanks, and that's what the anime needs to do. And of course, it just fills in all those action scenes, all those fights we didn't get to see in the manga, and just and turns up to like, I think, an 11 in this episode with Oden versus Kaido specifically. So many brilliant sequences, and just and you don't always get like a sense of color design in a black and white manga, of course. So just them fighting just in like a sea of flames, and like really upping that fake out with Momonosuke just adds so much more. But yeah, this is a phenomenal episode,
and they really nailed it. Like last episode with how the Yakuza and Samurai got their name, like they nailed that. So,
yeah,
it's a run of good episodes.
But just breathtaking action sequences. I've been liking a lot of tweets today.
Yeah, everyone's already pretty much covered it. The animation's beautiful this week. Not just because we have Henry on, but it was exceptionally well animated.
If it was terrible, tell me. It's
No,
okay.
believe
Henry,
me.
you did a very bad job. This
I
episode
would.
is dreadful.
But no, one thing I appreciate, just to show you how much we were paying attention, the fact that like when Odin's running across Kaido's body, and the top side of his hair, which is usually a circle, kind of turns into an oblong to follow the trail of his movement. I thought that was I could tell people were having fun with that sequence. Always good to see. But just also like the directing and the shot choices, even after the battle, when we're waiting for the potential execution of Odin in the Akazaya 9, it was well done. It's all good. Can't wait for next week.
Yeah, the episode is awesome. I don't have much more to add outside of what we've already recapped and what everyone else has gone through. I am very curious, though, to hear what Henry has to say.
All right, so let's see. First things first, not talking about my sequences. The Enshitsu, the episode director of the episode, was Ryosuke Tanaka. That's I guess who I got my sequences from and who I kind of went back and forth with. And then the animation director was uh, what is it? Toei's like up and coming big shot kind of animation director who is also a foreigner who's Chinese, whose name I'm going to butcher, but Tu Young Se, or I've seen in I've seen in a video Chu Yong Sa it was pronounced as. Anyway, TUYONGCE. Follow him on Twitter. He actually posts a bunch of English posts too, so even the English speaking world can communicate with him. He actually contacted me directly this time, so complete credit to him. He was a big part in amassing the team, because in the past when I took work from One Piece, I didn't know what episode I was getting. I would contact Toei or they would contact me and say, hey, there's more work. And then we would just work out a schedule and they'd be like, oh, well, during that time that you're free, Henry, this is what's available. And then I would try to talk with them about getting some good scenes from that episode. But they've been kind of random episodes, right? But this time, like they were specifically saying like, hey, there's a pretty crazy episode coming up and we want you to be a part of it, which I really appreciated. Actually, it's kind of a milestone, I kind of feel like emotionally for me, because there have always been some foreign animators out here, or international animators or super animators who are Japanese, who like seem to get invited into the big important sections, but I've never felt a part of that. Like I feel like I do an okay job, like I always hold down the fort with my work, but I'm always just like a normal animator. Like certain people, I don't want to really throw out names, but like Bahi JD is a good one. Everyone knows Bahi JD is like super famous and super like really good too, obviously. So like it seems like Bahi JD probably gets invited to like the super important scenes, but I never felt like that was me. I always felt like, oh, Henry also does good work, so sure, here, Henry. And then when I announced that I work on an episode, people would be like, oh, cool, Henry's working on something, but it's not something absolutely unique. Like you gotta call Henry for the all important thing, right? But this time they did that actually, and actually another project contacted me about that too, which will air in a few months. And I actually feel like probably the turnaround point for me for getting those messages was the last episode of One Piece I did, where Luffy punched the Medillo man in the face and the ripple came out. I think that was kind of a turning point. And people were like, oh, actually, Henry can do some really good stuff if you give him a chance. So, but this was the first time.
Got to trademark that as a Medillo moment, if you will.
Yeah, Medillo moment. It was clearly it was a very big moment in my career. So I appreciate having a chance to do that one. And then in this one, actually being contacted, hey, we want you to be a part of, the big episode coming up. I really, that meant something to me. But so thanks to the animation director here for reaching out. And I think I was one of the first people, if not literally the first person, to get the storyboards. Because I like, for it to fit in my schedule, I needed confirmation very early on, because my schedule was filling up with a ton of stuff. And so when the storyboards weren't even complete yet, I got a version of it and they were like, is there any part that you want? And I looked through it and I was like, I was questioning, like, should I do the or should I ask for like the Nitoryu slash, like the ultimate scene? But I kept as I was looking through the storyboards, I was like, what fits me the best? Like, where can I probably do the best work? And I saw this sequence where like the mustache wraps around Oden and then like whips him, and like the storyboards were like the storyboards were actually quite different from the way I drew it, but I could tell like they were rough and they were just like a rough kind of example of what generally they wanted to happen. So I felt like that section had a whole lot of freedom. Like the final Nitoryu slash, like obviously the way that the animator did it is amazing, but it's going to end in the same place. Like it's got to end with that manga page. So I was like, let me go for the little section where it's like just totally open. and then see what I can do with it. So yeah,
How much time did you have for animation?
To be honest, this one had a really good schedule. I don't want to give like exact dates and stuff, but this one I'd probably say they I don't know if this is just the normal schedule. I actually really don't know. Like, is this the normal new better schedule that Toei has kind of set up for episodes? Post COVID starting, and so like the whole, there was like a month or two break, and then the whole, they might have reorganized the whole production schedule. So maybe all the episodes are being produced with good timing now. But at least in my experience, like this one had a much longer schedule than normal. Like it seemed like they started like a full even month prior to what they would normally do. So
I'm glad to
I
hear
feel,
that, because like it
yeah.
would help to facilitate better animation if the animators get more time to really delve into their sequences.
Yeah, it's oh man, I could obviously rant about animation production.
We all can,
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
and
at least the three of us.
they need to.
Hey, you don't need to be in the industry to complain about
Yeah,
animation.
you could just go on Twitter.
Right.
Sure.
Well, yeah, but to say correct information.
There you go. Yes.
Uh, one big thing for me, especially with these like Toei and Pierrot type series that just keep going and going and going, and so there's never a break. They really need to leave a good time open for in between animation. For me, not to go off too much on a tangent, but I'll just do this little one. Like a lot of times the key animation is good. Sometimes you get bad key animation, I suppose, but like generally speaking, all the key animators are like, I want to do a good job. I'm going to give you something cool. Here's a cool layout, but so even the sequences that kind of turn out not good in the end, where you're like, I don't know how great this is. Yeah, people are looking at the preview for next week's episode and going, no, it doesn't look as good as this week's episode. I bet all of the key animation was handed in and it looked super solid. Like if you were looking at during the production phase, you'd be like, oh man, this looks
just for
this
quick definitional terms. The key animation is usually the poses that are done before the actual flute in between shots are done.
Right.
Just like kind of the blocking, essentially.
And so a really important part in Japanese anime industry is like leaving enough time to do those in-betweens well and ask for as many retakes as necessary. Because a lot of times what they do is they like all the other people are slow. The key animators are slow and the second key animators are slow. So I tried to not do that too. Like even though I knew that it
and
wasn't
then the in-betweener is like, oh, we need this as quickly as possible.
Exactly. So like it'll be all this great pre-production work with model sheets and storyboards and everything, and then there'll be all this time and effort put in during the key animation phase and the animation director phase and the cleaning up the key phase and the secondary key animation phase, and then all of a sudden it'll be like, okay, we have 2 days to do all of the in-between animation. Go.
Then what ends up happening not much
is
different in America, in the States too, sometimes.
But what ends up happening is like everything looked like an A+ episode. Oh man, this next episode is going to be like one of the best. God, look at all these amazing key drawings. And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, oh, this is what we ended up with. Well, I guess it's okay, right? Like because right at the end there, you don't leave enough time to get stuff done. And sometimes I have a real love-hate relationship with in-between animators because I was an in-between animator for many years, and like in-between animation is among the most important positions on the staff, I feel.
But they get the most shit on too.
They get the most shit on, and they don't get as much respect, et cetera, et cetera. But like I'm saying, like they can make or break something right at the end. They can make it too, because if the key animation is just okay, but they do like a super amazing job cleaning it up and making everything super crisp, they can turn an okay sequence into an even good sequence, right?
Yeah.
But my hate part of that relationship is, but they can also take great stuff and then just and sometimes it's the schedule's fault, but other times I have to say it isn't, and I'm like, what is this?
Well,
why did you not do as good? Like, oh
like
man,
you could back me up on this, Henry. Sometimes it's just like experience, like the difference between a good animator and a excellent animator is just like knowing how to cheat it, knowing how to work effectively so that the animation kind of really sells itself and you're not like wasting panels or wasting time doing things that don't quite flow so correctly.
what productions do you work on?
Oh,
Is Western production?
I've been an animator on like Cartoon Network shows like Out of Jimmy's Head, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I was a episode director on Rick and Morty, Teen Titans Go.
Okay,
So
awesome.
yeah,
I actually feel like, to be honest, currently, in between animators in the West are better than out here. And
interesting.
if there's any Eastern in between animator listening, I'm totally not hating on you. Like the good ones are doing a great job. But if there is even anyone listening, I would hope that they would even admit this. There's a lot of Eastern in between animators that don't do their job properly. They actually, in the West, this would never happen. You would never. Every time you ask for a new in between, there's a brand new drawing in between those two things, unless you're doing like cutout animation, right? But
Right.
if it's not that, then there's a new drawing in between the two drawings, right? That's what an in between is. Out here recently, there's like 80% of the people. So props to the 20 that don't do this, but there's like 80% of the people that are like, I've learned that the schedules are too hard. I'm not even attempting to do that. And so what I'm doing is I'm literally copying one of the keys, sliding it and pasting it, and then just calling it a day essentially. Like I'll change
Mm.
like the direction of the arm or whatever. And then what ends up happening is like it doesn't smoothly move from one key to the next key, right?
Yeah, it's
Instead,
gonna seem
like
very rigid.
and that's what happens even in my okay, so now to get into the details about kind of the work on this episode, but I'll use one of the previous jobs I did on One Piece as an example for why I handled this episode the way I did. So when I did the dragon in 913, flying through the air, I like how that all turned out. I think it turned out well, but as the person that drew it, there's a few little things that irked me. So when the dragon was flying through the air, I added just a handful of keys. Like there was one where it was in the distance, and then one where it was halfway to the screen, and then one where it was close to the screen. And I was like, okay, that's good. That's good to go, right? Because now I'll ask for 5 in betweens between those, and the in between animator will do that, and it'll look nice and smooth, like slithering up to the screen, right? And what ended up happening is, and I don't think anyone else knows this, I think they all just think like, oh, it's good animation, like it looks fine. I think it looks okay. But sure enough, like that middle of the road, like in between, right? That was halfway to the screen. That exact face was copied and pasted like 3 times. So, and then it was retraced. So the lines that it's not like it turned into total cutout animation. Like it was then reworked. So, it ended up working.
Hmm.
But I noticed it. I was like, this isn't totally new drawings that is morphing nicely as it comes close to the screen, right? And that just bothers me because that's what the job was supposed to be. And so um for this episode, I went totally just batshit crazy, and like almost everything is a key. Like I asked for like this thing had like 200 keyframes or something like that, or like 100 and originally there was one other sequence that it was linked to, but it was 160 or 170 keyframes. That ended up being a few more, I think. And like within that, there's like I asked for like maybe 10 in betweens, but otherwise it's like all key animation, which really isn't supposed to be how you do it. I
Right.
actually
That's
saw
extensive.
I saw one comment on because I'm looking at what people are commenting about it, if they like it or not. And one person made a comment which was interesting. I think they were complimenting me, but they said something along the lines of, oh, Henry's approach is kind of the Western approach of like pretty much all keyframes.
Hmm.
Which
Oops, all keyframes.
Castlevania and some Western
Yeah,
projects
or
with like
even like
Rick.
Invincible right now.
Yeah, well, they do that kind of, and a lot of the Western animators also participating in anime do that. And I actually don't like that, to be honest. I actually did
Mhm.
a thing I don't like in this episode, which is that I think it's supposed to be done the way that I explained earlier, which is like there's a handful of keys, and then you ask for 3, 4, 5 in betweens if necessary.
Mhm.
But I'm getting paranoid working out here in Japan now because I noticed that like it's really a roll of the dice of what kind of in between animator is it going to go to? Is it going to go to one of the 20% that's like that just rocks it and does it exactly what I want them to do, or is it going to go to one of the I can copy and paste this and be done way sooner people? if it goes to one of them, I have to be very careful and give massive amounts of keyframes, or a problem's going to happen. On the flip side of that, asking for if I do like nonstop keyframes, then if a retake comes in, or if later on the animation director
For the uninitiated, retake is when you ask for a change in a sequence or animation.
yeah,
Just basically
and
like a
that's
redo.
and in the anime industry, that's 100% going to happen between the layout and the secondary key animation phase. The reason there even is a secondary key animation phase is because you hand in the layout first, then the director, episode director, animation director, a whole bunch of
Makes their
really important
notes, yeah.
people, they check it, they give their notes, and they're always going to give some note. To give
Yeah,
no note is to almost not do their job, right?
Yeah, because like
So-
it just for people knowing, like this is like a collaborative process where a lot of people check in at various stages to make sure everything's kind of up par. So it's a lot of people like running things past everybody and making sure it's good before we get to move forward.
And so when it comes, so definite changes are coming in, and then you have to actually draw and super crisply all of your keys during the secondary key phase here in Japan. And so if I have, even if it's an action sequence, if I have 40 drawings and then I ask for a whole bunch of in-betweens, that's going to make my life a certain level of difficult when the secondary key animation phase comes in. If I decide, I'm going to just do all the in-betweens even myself, because that'll make sure that no one can mess it up in the process. Hooray. Well, and then I end up with 200 keyframes in a sequence. When I have to do my secondary key animation job, I've just made my life a living hell. Like it's not that's not supposed to be the process. I have now ruined my schedule in my life, and I'm not going to earn any more money on it, right?
Yeah,
like
because obviously the more drawings you have to do, the harder the work is to get it done in that
crushed
amount
myself.
of time. Yeah.
But
it makes the animation so much smoother and a lot more detailed and beautiful.
It does, but consider this also. Can you really do your secondary key animation if you make it this heavy? Because there's a chance, they'll contact you, and this happens with this actually. At some point, I'm going to do a video about like the pros and the cons of like the Western artists working on anime. They're obviously super skilled people from around the world being amassed, like to work on as freelance animators on all these projects, which is a great thing. But one problem is a lot of them don't. Something happens with the schedule, and when their secondary key animation phase comes around, they go, oh well, now I'm totally busy and I can't do that, or I can't make that schedule, pass that part of the process off to someone else. Now that's one thing. If it's a head turn, if it's a head turn and it's 3 keyframes, that's fine. You find a secondary key animator, that's a job, that's not that's
less likely they'll be able to mess that up.
But yeah, exactly, it's fine. And even if it's 20, hey, look, sometimes you get a difficult sequence, hey, that's also secondary key animation. But if it's a 200 frame sequence where they did super rough layouts that was all expected to be fixed up later in the secondary key phase, that's like undoable. No one else can almost do that sequence anymore. So your 200 layout frames actually don't help the production process. Now it's a huge problem, because like, who can possibly do this that's not you, the original creator of it? Like, you were really supposed to see through this part of the process too.
Yeah, because
so
like other in-betweeners have different skill levels as well.
Well, you can't even pass it off to an in-betweener until someone actually cleans up those keyframes, because then you would be doomed. You would get a nightmare sequence. But so like, when I decided, okay, I'm gonna draw almost every frame of Oden flying through all these rocks here, I was like, I'm also creating a living hell for myself of how many.
Yeah, so your choice to do like kind of the liquefying bubbles as he's hitting the rock side.
Okay, so obviously I rant like crazy. God, I haven't. So real quick, last thing I just want to comment on before I go to my cuts is there were a bunch of people that were amassed on this one. I don't have time to go through all of them, and to be honest, I don't know exactly who did what sequence. But go definitely check out Twitter and try to find the animators, show them some love. The only one I'll mention is the actual, when the style suddenly changed and then Oden actually dashed at Kaido and did the slash. That was Takashi Kojima, who I had to look up to see exactly what he did, but recently he did like the Sanji kicking page 1 when he was in dragon form. Like that was a crazy
Oh
sequence.
yeah, definitely.
He,
I could recognize
yeah.
it now. Yeah, he has a very distinct style, which
The style totally changes, which I appreciate,
yes.
because as I advance in my career, if I'm allowed to, I'll probably keep doing that too. Like I don't mind if people suddenly recognize my stuff right when it starts popping up. I guess different productions care about that differently.
I am proud of myself going into the episode blind. I'm like, all right, let's see if I could spot the Henry scene. And just as soon as I saw
Oh really? That's cool.
multiple, okay, I wasn't sure if that would bum you out or not, but as soon as I saw multiple levels of shading and when those very organic blobby rock shapes, I'm like, oh, that's our
well, I like
Henry scene right there.
I like it if it's a good meeting. If it's like oh no, this is a Henry cut, isn't it? Like then that's but
Not far from it.
I think most people saying that they noticed it mean it as a good thing. So I do really appreciate that. But Takeshi Kojima, he actually he hasn't participated in One Piece super like tons. But when I went on Sakugaboru and which is a website that shows all the different animator sequences, I noticed he worked as far back as like Dressrosa, and like Kairos cutting off Don Flamingo's head was also him. That one wasn't as like super flashy as he's become recently, but he was doing even good work as far back as that. So that was my highlight for the episode too, far more than my cut. I love when that style changed. Man, Takeshi Kojima did an absolutely amazing job. So very happy to be even a part of an episode that he contributed that to. All right, so now my sequence. Yeah, so this isn't a part of the manga. This was just in the storyboards, as part of the additional fight sequences added in here. I took a few extra sequences also for another one of our animators at Dare Stagio, Yuko Frustos. And so she did the two leading up into my sequences. So Kaido, so Oden like slashing his swords on the sides of Kaido's body, and then Kaido swooshing around, and then the mustache kind of zooming at Oden was her. One thing I will mention, overall for all of our sequences, the art direction in this episode is amazing, and obviously you follow the art direction, and that's the right directorial choice 100%. No one knew exactly what all the colors were going to be, so this episode got very dark, so some of the details and some of the things are a little bit hard to see. But again, I wouldn't have sacrificed good art direction for just a little bit more clarity in the animation. So absolutely correct choice. But like in Yuko's cut, like there's animation of the mustache actually zooming up to Oden, but because it's all colored black and the whole screen is we're up in the dark sky that's only underlit with some reds, like. I wondered if it was a little hard to understand, but nevertheless, like cool animation sequences. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. So, okay. The reason I like working on One Piece is not just because I'm a huge One Piece fan. It's also, it's kind of, it's like a perfect match, was like a perfect storm kind of situation. One Piece is like my favorite series essentially right now. But also they seem to like my work more than almost anyone else. I mean, other places I work, they also like my work, but I get almost no corrections, and I can seem to manipulate what they even give me to however I want. So like the ripple on the face in the last episode I animated, that wasn't in the storyboard, but I was like, I'm going to add it and see if they just let Henry add whatever Henry wants. They seem to have been letting me do that, so let me give it a shot. And in that one, they were like, sure, ripple, whatever, like Henry, you got it. So when I get that attitude, it makes me more inspired to just keep doing that. So the storyboards actually showed this as a whole bunch of different sequences. This actually isn't supposed to be one cut. Oden is wrapped up, then Kaido turns his head Then Oden gets flipped. Then there's a total like side angle of him just bursting through some rocks. That's actually how it was originally presented. But I was like, One Piece has given me total freedom, so I'm just going to go crazy, and I'm going to hope, fingers crossed, that they're down with it. And so actually, I connected all of my sequences originally when I handed it in. So Oden gets wrapped up, but then we swoosh up into Kaido's face, which was supposed to be a totally different sequence, but I actually animated us just swooshing up there, and then we swoosh to the side as he flips or like twists his head and throws Oden into the rocks. And then rather than cutting, we zoom up and away from, and we change the angles as Oden flies through all the rocks. And then originally, actually, it even connected to the last cut I did, which is the very next one when he lands on the ground. And was it like Ashura and Kinemon's like clothes all blow with the wind. That was also my sequence. Originally, I actually had it so he crashed into the ground and there was some of those flashy lighting effects. But the episode director thought like just that one he would like to keep a second sequence, which I totally am down with. That's totally cool. But all of the others they were 100% fine with. They were like, sure, do your crazy thing, Henry, and link all of this stuff. And so that was kind of my attitude. My attitude was I didn't have time to take a ton of sequences in this episode like I did the last episode. Last episode, I took like 25 cuts or something, like really like a high number. This one, it was only, 5 cuts or so. But in place of that, I was like, let me see if I can literally link all of them via smooth animation.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like as you discussed before, like the more frames and keyframes you have to do, that only increases the amount of work you have to do. So if sequence is particularly movement heavy and involves a lot of like characters or acting, then that's obviously going to add to the count of how much
Mhm.
time it's going to take to get through those sequences.
Yeah. In terms of the rocks, because I get comments on the rocks. So, 2 things. One, I was influenced by Naoto Shishida, who is like the super ultra animator at Toei, who does like the craziest sequences. He like when he did which one? I forget which one I'm being inspired by now. I think it was when Kaido actually hit Luffy and then threw him up against the rocks. I think there was some sequences there too where like Luffy hit the rocks and then like via animation we zoomed up with the rocks cracking. So the thing is, I've never done that before, so I knew I wasn't going to do it as good as Naoto Shida, but I was like, well, I'll do it live.
Because he's known for doing like the volumetric square
Yeah.
rocks, kind of like pulsating and levitating from the ground when impacts happen.
Well, one thing I did know that I didn't want to do the cubes. There are some animators that can do that, and like they're just like ultra super great animators in Japan that like they made that style, and so they can obviously do it like perfectly. But I think that is being imitated too often recently. So like when I do rubble, to the extent I can, I want to actually just draw breaking up rocks and cracks and stuff like that.
So that's really interesting. In the States, or at least certain productions, will have separate effects animators for entire productions. Like that's the only thing you're doing, like effects, debris, fire, energy effects, such. So like a character animator doesn't have to attach effects in most productions.
Yeah. But in anime, that is almost never the case. I think that might be the case on certain film productions, like literally Ghost in the Shell Innocence or the new Evangelion movies have such long production schedules that like we'll do as many retakes as necessary. They may add nuanced things like that, but in Japan, the reason actually Genga, so we keep saying key animator and things like that, those are Western terms and they're the correct translation, but realistically it's Genga and Doga. Doga is in between animation. Genga is the position for key animation, but that's not true. What Genga is it is literally you are the person who is making like the movie. Genga, it can be translated as like film essentially, which is you make the film. You are handed a blank piece of paper essentially, or or a new file if you're doing it digitally, and now make it show what is happening on film. So you have to draw the background, the layout, the perspective lines, all of the character animation, all of the character keyframes. You have to write all of the, you have to draw all of the effects animations, and then you have to write the notes for what compositing effect should happen at what part of everything that is happening, what should be in focus, what should be out of focus, when the focus would change, and then you need to write all of that on the timesheets.
Yeah, so every artist, every animator themselves
You
have
have
to be their own director, essentially.
Yes, it is almost like you direct your own sequence. Of course, then it goes through the actual director. So then that, which is essentially the Gengamon passing it into, the higher ups in the production, and then them going, let's see if you really did it right. But if they do like what you did, then their answer might be, well, actually, you did do it right. Okay, back to you. And then like you kind of do own those sequences. It's not like like when I worked on Western productions, I can point out things that I've done. Like I always bring up Super Jail. Like Super Jail season 1 was like the big
Oh yeah,
Western production that I worked
yeah.
on.
I have buddies who worked on that show too.
And I can point to all the sequences I did, and I'm super proud of them. Though realistically, if you want to break it down, I was responsible for the characters that are moving, right? The background I didn't draw, the layout I didn't draw, the characters not moving in the background were prepared by someone else. I moved everything, and but in anime production, especially in situations like this where I get back almost no corrections, I did it. Like what you're looking at is like literally like I opened up a blank file, and then other than in between animation and cleanup and color, like you're essentially just like looking at Henry work, including how the background moves and everything. So
Yeah, like giving artists their own personal styles. Certain productions in the West allow for that, like OKKO and even Steven Universe. The storyboard artists you can kind of see whose style based on like how they interpret the characters in minute ways. But after a certain time, you're like, oh, I recognize that artist.
To address the liquid thing that people are saying, that was unintentional. So you can even say that that's a mess up. My idea, well, if you look at my rough animation, I posted rough animation on like Twitter and stuff. I didn't know what the colors were, so this isn't an excuse. Like I actually like what I did, so like I'll totally defend it now. But let me explain it so people understand. So like first I did all the rocks, and the rocks are actually hard edged and jagged. But then I was like, this is definitely not enough, or at least I felt it wasn't. So like when he blasts through the side, and even before he blasts through the side, as the cracks appearing, I also added like little like puffs of, I don't know, smoke, I guess, smoke or dust debris kind of coming out. I wonder in hindsight if I should have added a blur on those, because if I added a blur on those, because usually I guess smoke layers do have that. And so the thing is, it was all on one layer. All of this is like one layer. Nothing was broken up. So to ask for a blur on that, I would have had to broken it up into 2 layers. So I was like, I'll just keep it all together. I don't think it needs a blur. I think the other thing so that could just be the answer. But there's one other thing. Halfway through, actually, so when I handed in my layouts, which isn't what I posted online. What I posted online was the secondary key animation. So that's with all the corrections. But my very first run through had normal shadows, right? Where this kind of the light was coming from above, and I shaded everything from Oden to Kaido to the smoke here as like I normally do. But then one correction I got when it came back, I got no corrections in terms of timing and motion and drawings and all of that. But the one comment I did get was reshade your entire thing so that it's underlit. right? Because then I guess they had decided on exactly what the art direction was going to be.
Yeah, and
so
probably like be consistent with the fire in the previous.
of course,
sequence.
it had to be consistent with all the other sequences, right? It couldn't, my sequences couldn't just suddenly be different. I'm sure that they gave the exact same comment to anyone who handed in their original layouts shaded normally. And so, Kaido's face, make sure like there's like a hard shadow like on the forehead and from above, right? Same thing with Kaido, like the dark area isn't supposed to be under his chin like you'd normally draw. The darkest part should be his forehead, and then underneath is where it gets light. So when I got to the smoke, I was like, damn, what should I do? Like that this is the first time I'm underlighting smoke. So I probably shouldn't have drawn it as detailed as I did. I think that's one thing. I should have just kept it simplistic where like the bottom is light and then it just gets gradually darker towards the top. But I added like all these circles and all these like tons of like my over crazy detailing of the stuff and resulted in, I guess, some people saying it looked a little bit more liquefied than smoky. But again, I'm kind of okay with it. Like, someone asked me what's the most important part, like, or what's the hardest part of making these sequences, and my answer, which I 100% stick to, is following through your sequence to the very end, properly finishing every frame, and making the schedule, and doing so without like losing your mind and breaking into tears. And so as I'm doing these hundreds of drawings, I have to constantly go back and refix up things while also keeping my eye on the clock, right? So like I went through and I did all of the drawings as best as I could, but then obviously I caught like a million and one problems. I was like, oh no, the scars on Oden's face change from the beginning and when he zooms up into screen later on. Oh, I didn't add the second shadow layer to all of these frames, even though I did for all these other ones. I need to go back and fix that.
Right.
The dragon's face isn't doing what I want it to do. I'm noticing the scales are sliding on Kaido and it doesn't look good. So I know, obviously, as you're working through this, I think making animation is a lot like I don't know. It's a lot more like making like a clay pot or something than people probably think. It's not like you finish one thing and then it's done. Like you have to constantly keep like look left, look right, remold that. I thought I was done with that keyframe, but let's go back in and change like how the shadow's hitting the arm, right?
And you have a time limit and a
and
production
you have to keep your
execution.
eye on the clock, right? And there's always the option of you going and saying, oh well, I didn't hand it in on time, or I can't make it on time, so can you just make the in-betweens animator's life harder while I extend my production schedule? You can do that potentially, but understand what you're doing. So I kept going in through and molding what I could where I could, and to be honest, the smoke was like an afterthought for me. Like I did notice it though. I was like, I should put, this is the first time I'm under shading smoke. I should probably handle this differently.
I see. I'm looking at like one of the keyframes of the smoke. I can see if you called out for the effects to be like blurred or like opacity over it, it would look more like smoke clouds than like hard liquid.
But so, also another thing, in anime, you never see the final until it's actually airing, which I know is crazy for Western production.
No, it's the same for us as well.
Oh, is it real?
Yeah,
what? I
because
guess I think I got really lucky when I was working. So Super Gel wasn't like that. Like
yeah, because Super Gel, they actually had you guys do all the animation locally.
Exactly, it was in-house. But yeah,
a lot of productions are sent overseas.
So okay, I don't have as much experience on that. So, but it's like a live and learn kind of situation. Just like I mentioned, Takeshi Kojima, his earlier sequence was like Don Flamingo's head being cut off, and now cut to Oden, and like look at how much his stuff has evolved, right? And so like, why has it evolved? Because as he works, he notices things, and it's like, what can I do? What can't I do? What works best? What doesn't work best? And so underlighting smoke. All right, well, I learned a few things, but all that being said, I think it still looks cool. So like, job well done this time. Plus I'm learning some stuff. So
that's one of the things I particularly like about working in television animation. It's like, well, maybe I didn't nail all the jokes, and maybe I didn't nail the framing for this one this time, but I got 100 other episodes to do. I'll just keep going forward and get better over time.
you got one thing is I think this requires a balance, but like to really, and I think this comes naturally to most artists anyway, but like you have to be able to balance critiquing yourself, but then also forgiving yourself, because like you can't just think everything you hand in is perfect. Like, oh man, I'm just perfect. I don't need to get any better
Or
ever.
else
Like,
you're gonna hit a really rough wall when you get turned into something. It's like, do about 50 changes here.
or more likely, you're just one of those artists that everyone recognizes, like, they've peaked. This is their level, and hire them if you're okay with that level, but don't expect anything more because they're never going to put in that extra 150%, right? Like
Sure.
they're okay with where they're at, so you can see where they're at. So use that person or not. But there's a different artist where it's like, man, they're just everything they hand in is better and better. Like I can't wait to see where they go, and hopefully that's what I'm doing.
And even from experience with the artists you've worked with, where it's like those people I know who are like at the top of their game are still looking at like, no, I can improve.
Of course, yeah. But the flip side of that is, which I'll just mention, is you also got to just move on. So it's like, okay, that's right. How this episode turned out. That's really good. That could be improved next time. All right. Well, I'm not going to live in depression and crush myself over it. Lessons learned.
As I often say to people, and Steve knows, it's like it's not brain surgery. No one's going to die. Just keep moving forward.
Yeah. And so some people online were saying like it looks kind of like mud. Honestly, it could be mud. It could be, because
it was raining earlier.
It doesn't even matter. Like everything's burned. The world is burned. One other thing. The last thing I'll mention just about that, and we can move on. But I really didn't know the colors and art direction as we went through, like I mentioned with the shadows, but also the colors and how dark different things would be. I think that the smoke is colored super similarly to the rock here. So when I was originally doing it, like the shadow is hitting it normally, so I know I was controlling it as smoke better. And then I was kind of under the impression it was going to be like different colors, like the Naoto Shishida cut that I referenced. I'm pretty sure had that. When I was looking at it, I was like, oh, there's clearly like these extra chunks coming out of the rocks. I mean, but this is what all the colors ended up being. And look, I'm fine with that. I don't really think I have anything to apologize for. I think it turned out just fine. But
that's why we brought you here, so you can apologize about everything.
Little lessons learned in the future. Be careful about underlighting smoke. In the future, be careful about maybe adding that blur on smoke, and also as early as possible try to get a feel of what the art direction is and what will be broken up into different colors and what.
I mean, you can also look at like this. You did such a phenomenal job with that sequence. You may end up kind of creating your own signature in a way.
I'm down with that too, potentially. So like again, no regrets. I like how it turned out. And to be honest, you know what? Here, I'm going to say something where I don't even know if this is like a great thing to say, because some people probably get pissed. But like, I actually don't need everyone to love my stuff. So long as
you don't. No, you don't.
No, but you know what really it's not even just for, it's for my mental health. I need to feel that. No, it's not just that. It's my observation. Like, here, I'm going to say something super controversial. I mean, everyone here might agree with me, or someone might moan. My favorite episode of Naruto Shippuden was that Naruto versus Pain fight. And I don't care what anyone says. I love that it went completely crazy and was just totally the whims of that animator. Like, I love seeing an animator just use their time as their playground and just go absolutely crazy. And online, you have the people that think that that's the greatest episode, and then you have people that think that that is the worst episode. It's absolute trash. So what that shows me, even if you guys could throw your 2 cents in about that if you want, or you don't even have to. My overall point is, I noticed that even the people that I respect the most, who I think did the best job, have a whole bunch of people commenting, well, I didn't like what you did at all. So obviously, even if I'm doing the greatest job possible ever, right, beyond what I'm even, beyond what I'm doing, like 10 years from now, if I'm 100 million times better than what I am, obviously, if I'm doing it right, there's still going to be those comments, because even the things that I love the most get those comments. So when I get them, it is what it is.
Yeah, you're just gonna go around ruining people's childhoods like the rest of us.
So it's like you said, like, oh, you don't like my smoke? Well, you know what? I like my smoke. I think I'm gonna add it more in more episodes just because you don't like it. How about that?
Yeah, that's the attitude that I have.
Yeah, I think that's all I have to rant about. But anyone have any questions?
Jeez, I don't even know what I don't even know what I could ask at this point. Like, you always like you tell us everything. Like, you leave nothing for me really. Like, oh, that answers that. But and even like you provide us stories with. I didn't even know there was context behind that. We just had like a 10-minute segment devoted to rocks and smoke. No complaints. I'm just thinking, like,
Yeah,
man, like what? I don't know, Brian. Like, you know, you've been really great during this.
Have we had Brian and Henry on the same show?
No, I don't think we've been on the same.
No, we
yet.
didn't.
So
Yeah, that's
intentional. I book things intentionally.
Yeah, we're the two old hats as far as like animation production concerned. Like, one thing I know about specifically Japanese production, a buddy of mine was on the producer for Little Witch Academia, but he had previously produced for American productions and then went over there. And the thing he told me, what's most fascinating, you kind of touch upon this a little bit, Henry, is the fact that the artists get more control. And then producers, so like he's trying to get the artist like, hey, when's that sequence coming in? It's like, oh yeah, I'll have it for you in a week. And he comes back a week later and it's like, oh no, I need 2 more weeks.
There is going to be a day where I probably give I see it as like someday I'm going to give the most controversial interview of my life, when at some point I'm on a big stage and I'm talking to a Western producer and they ask me for advice or what, things like that. Because you want to know almost God, it's almost hard for me to say. Like, there's a million reasons I moved out to Japan, but at the end of the day, the more I think about it, the fact that I couldn't stand Western production was a big one. And it all boils down to what you just said.
Yeah,
I always questioned what it was. I always questioned what it was. Was it that? Was it that nuance thing? And now it's coming to me more and more on a daily basis. That's the reason. Because producers in the West think they're in charge. And in the East, the artists are in charge.
Because in the States, the monetary value is different. Like, the artists don't have any respect on their productions here.
But it's even, well, because even in the West, though, I'm sure the producers make more money. So, in terms of capitalism, it all plays out the same. But in terms of production, when you're working in the West, the artists can make a whole thing or have a whole bunch of ideas, and we did on Super Jail 1 too, and then the producers can walk in and go, I love what you guys are doing, this and this, sorry, we're not going to be able to do that,
for arbitrary reasons sometimes.
And the artists have to just say yes. Whereas in the East, and producers will not believe what I am telling them, but I swear to God it's true, in Japan, the producer could walk in the room and go, I'm going to curse. I can curse on this.
Yeah.
On this.
Please.
Okay. The producer can walk in the room, and I swear to God this is true, and be like, "Why are we doing this, and this? This isn't exactly what I asked for." And the director could be like, "Oh, well, because I wanted to." And they could be like, "Well, can you change that?" And the director will go, "No, I can't." They get the fuck out of my fucking room, and they will walk out. Because who the fuck are you? You're the fucking producer. Pay for the fucking production, and then you're gonna get the fucking profits on the back end. Otherwise, get the fuck out of the room while the artists make stuff. And that's how it works.
No way in hell.
It's awesome. and I can never go back to the West. I can never go back after working like this.
Someone like Brian and I try that in the West, and it just immediately cuts to us outside a chain link fence. Like, well, that's the end of me.
Of course, yeah.
Because the excuse they would use, like, we pay for the production, which means we're paying your salary. So
which means I'm the boss. Yeah, that's how it works.
That's how it goes.
And here it's like, you would have no production if you didn't have the genius director or or super artists working on this.
Right.
So what are you going to do with your money? It's not
I
going to
mean-
turn into an anime,
I
that's
mean,
for sure. Right?
because like you think about it like that, it's like, why else are you paying me but for my skill and advice?
Exactly.
You don't have a production if you don't have me on here. But like they see us as like disposable objects, and they also don't respect the craft of the medium. Thus, our voices
But-
aren't often heard.
But the truth is, and this is the unfortunate reality I came to, it doesn't matter how good of an argument you make right there, Brian. No matter how many times you say that argument, your industry will never change. You're still going to have to go into work and live with the reality of the way it is. And so did I. And
Yeah.
that is one of the things that, like, now that I've seen it working differently, look, the anime industry has really hard deadlines. We get paid way less.
Yes.
You know, like there's no quality of life. Like you guys have better quality of life probably.
Yes.
All
I
of this
talked to
stuff.
LaShawn about that, and yeah, he told me that as well.
But dude, I swear, as an artist, to be on the other side of this whole producer slash director argument that we're talking about right now, you have no idea how freeing it is. I swear I'll take all those other bad things in replace of it.
Well, the other thing that you guys have, at least in Japan, it's like the quality. Yeah, you're not being paid as much, but the quality of life in general in that country is better.
That
in
is
certain
also true.
respects.
Yes.
So it's like,
There's
yeah,
no-
you don't need a big social safety net when you
There's
have it.
yeah. Every area is like super safe. There's literally like no dangerous area.
Yeah, I
and-
mean, or just medical stuff where it's like,
and-
I need a
and-
job
and I
to
was gonna say
live.
the second thing is you immediately get the socialized health insurance. So the
Mhm.
point is, like, even if you're poor here in this country, it doesn't mean danger in any way. That's what it all translates to.
Right, exactly.
Like in America, like no money equals danger, and something like, oh, you know, you're gonna be living in an area that, you know, isn't the best area. And, you know, what if you get sick? You're in trouble. But if you, so there's danger, there's almost danger in being poor, which is horrible, right?
Right.
But here, there's no danger. There is no, the quality of life, yes, I want a nice TV and a nice apartment.
Which
but
means
no-
people can pursue their happinesses more often
Yes.
than not.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not just doing it for a paycheck. I'll say this because, like, I've been in this industry for like 16, almost 17 years now. I have seen a change. Like the first few productions I ever worked on were literally like a preschool production, so the thinking there is a little different. But the thing I've noticed just from the last 8 years of animation productions that there are more diverse voices in the room, and a lot of the art, because I think the work moving digitally is contributing to the fact that things are getting a little looser. So we can get things like what was that, Midnight Gospel? Like Midnight Gospel would not have happened 10 years ago. Maybe 30 years ago, like back in the advent of like liquid television and MTV, that might have happened. But 10
but
years
even
ago,
then,
no
it would
way
have
was
just been
producing
that
anything
one
like that.
show. It was like,
Exactly.
I look back at that time, and I love all those productions too, right? Like, there's a handful of little productions in like maybe the
Yeah,
late 80s.
because it was too expensive to produce back then. But now with
Yeah.
like you can literally get Harmony on your computer in Storybook Pro and do an animation yourself. Versus like Ralph Baskey had this talk a while ago. It's like, you guys should all be making your own movies because you can. It's like, we're not cutting down trees in the Amazon just to get paper so that we can draw on production anymore. You can literally do it in your computer. So I think with that, it's going to help kind of free up the artists to kind of take a little more control and do more interesting productions than we would have been limited to, because of the scope of animation to production was so expensive and needed a big studio, versus now we're all working at home.
Well, with that being said, I think there's nothing left on the table. It's always a pleasure having Henry on. You give us everything, nothing to be desired. Like we even have like a 10-minute segment now devoted to rocks and smoke. Always like a fascinating look at a Westerner's experience working in anime. This was awesome. Thank you, Henry.
You're welcome. Anytime.
And you will be heading out after this segment, so please plug away. Where could people find you? Give us all the details.
Twitter, Instagram, all that. Henry Thurlow. If you just Google my name, or Henry Thurlow Animator, I think is the name on a couple of those. Yeah, look up our studio, D'Art Stagio, D''ART, and then studio spelled interestingly. Watch our vlog series. Me along with the CEO Arthel Isom of D'Art Stagio do like a vlog series where we talk about anime industry stuff. In those episodes, we talk about why we have the weird spelling of the name and everything like that. And definitely, okay. In the next few months, I'm gonna have some crazy updates and news, like absolutely ridiculous. Like we'll be talking again sometime, and then you'll be like, "Man, Henry, you knew all that stuff." So there's a few really big projects that I'm working on that are going to be announced, and then just some big other news in general. So I think, yeah, definitely give me a follow, and you will be very. You'll thank yourself because the next few months are going to be absolutely crazy, and I'll probably be back on. Maybe
I'm surprised you're even hinting at it. So yeah, you're definitely you're gonna be back on the show when
I'm gonna be back on the show at some point, maybe July-ish, and we'll see. I don't know exactly when things are going to be announced. That's the issue, but as things get announced, yeah, and I'll be working on One Piece again at some point in the future. That I will say I'm not working on right at the moment, so don't expect any more episodes from me in the super near future. It takes a few months. Even if I was working on something right now, it would be like 2 months away, and I'm not. So hold tight. But I'll say I guarantee future One Piece work as well.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much once again, and let's close out the show.
This has been the One Piece Podcast, episode 669 for the week of Sunday, May 2nd, 2021. And as you just heard, that was it was the end of our triple anime recap, but that was the anime recap for episode 972 with Henry Thurlow. We also had our anime recaps for 970 and 971 with the crew here, hosted by Sam. We also had our Oden recap. And as always, please check out our Fight Together series and our Forced to Watch 4Kids series. The Forced to Watch 4Kids is exclusive to our Patreon, mostly at the moment. I think some other episodes may be unlocked on other Manga Break weeks. We'll see. The Fight Together is on our Patreon as a preview, and then it's got its own feed, and it's also released on this feed. So check those episodes out. And so let's go around the horn. Brian, where can the people find you?
Sorry, car. People can find me at Dark King Zoro.
In a car.
Twitter. Yeah, in a car. All one word. Check me on Fight Together, which I believe the episode that might be coming out is our discussions about transgender characters in One Piece.
I think that might be out on the Patreon, but I think it's coming out this week on the main feed.
And then check me out also on the Animation Success Stories podcast, where we talk to other animation industry professionals, find out what inspired them to get into the business, how they got into the business, and what trials and tribulations they went to in order to achieve their dream. That's ASS podcast, all one word. And then, I can't think of any shows I'm working on that are out now, except for all those cars that are outside. So I'll leave it there.
All right. Jill, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. Oh, there's a car. You can find me on Twitter and most other social media at Piratess on Luck. Be on the lookout. Kelly and I may have a merch-themed YouTube thing coming up for One Piece stuff. Still in the works, but, keeping her out.
Awesome. And Sam, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Lucky Chainsaw. And what's that? Is that a car coming? Crashing right into my car. Oh my god, everything's a mess.
It's the same car.
Oh right. God.
And hey Steve, where can the people find you?
There's a car. You could find me on my website, steveyurko.com, and social media like Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at Steve Yurko.
Fantastic. And the podcast, as well, we should say, happy Greek Easter to Alex, who could not be on this episode this week, and happy impending fatherhood to Zach, who will be out for a few months. And you can find them at Dude Exclamation on Twitter and Zach_Logan on Twitter. I am Edward E. One Piece on Twitter, and the podcast can be found at OnePiecePodcast.com, Twitter.com, YouTube.com, and Facebook.com/OnePiecePodcast. OnePiecePodcast@gmail.com is our email address, and you can subscribe on SoundCloud, subscribe on Spotify, subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, or call us on our phone number. That's 347-497-MAGI. 347-497-6254. Call anytime with your questions, your comments, your theories. We didn't do a piece together this week, so save them all for next week.
Anytime.
Except this week.
And
Any other time.
I'm not against doing some kind of trivia, but we're not going to do any this week. So
Well, I thought with Zach's time away, I thought we would we'd put the trivia segment on ice a little bit. But I had my new closing segment ready to go just in case if you guys want to start.
What is it?
I tested this back when we had the singles episode. Yeah, that was Valentine's Day weekend. We won't do it with as many options, but I thought, you know what, I'm gonna randomize a character, every week, and we're all gonna just like take turns to saying one thing we like about a One Piece character.
Right.
And I have a link in our Zoom chat ready for y'all.
Sure.
We're gonna be saying one thing we like about Charlotte Raisin.
Oh boy.
I'll begin by just saying I really like his Amethyst from Steven Universe hair.
Oh, you took the hair. I was gonna take the hair.
I like how he doesn't do anything that would make me angry at him, unlike certain other members of the Charlotte family.
I like that he's one of Big Mom's kids because I love all of my children.
Absolutely.
Ryan, what do you have to say about
I
Raisin?
like that his name is Raisin.
Yeah.
I like that
I
he has
also
lines
like-
on his face.
Yes, I was about to say I like the lines on his face showing the passage of time and possessing the matrix of leadership from Transformers. So that would make him Raisinus Prime.
Get out of here.
Thanks.
All right, it's time to
Well, good timing. We should get out of here.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for the One Piece podcast. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh boy.
Nice.
Ooh.
No.
Raisins.
No. Nice.